that we, since El had to do with Shiva supposedly, and now I don't have to do Shiva anymore, so we can't talk about it. But we really focused not on the thing of doing Shiva, we focused on the thing of Zman Shiva, right? Seriously, my Shiva. Now, of course, this is nicht, nicht echt a question about Zman Shiva. It just happens to be that, like we said over there, that the Zman Shiva seemed to seem to make the question more salient than others, man. But it's the same question about Shabbos and about Yom Tov and about every other. It's really a question about Kedushas Zman more than a question about Shiva. It happens to be that it's interesting to say, but this itself we have to is maybe more of a like a sociological chakira. In the Rishonim, in other words, the people that we see, mostly when they talk about this question, talk about the Zman Shiva, and they don't talk about the Kedushas and Pirim. Interessante Sache. That's beide. In some, according to my Lesikim Advurim, there's a Stückel Machloikus zwischen der Rambam and the Kizri, and the Chizdu Kreskas, which is on the side of the Kizri in a certain sense. If Zman Shiva are real, right? That's my language.
So you can cuss without us, it's real?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Yeah, and the Kizri sicher halt, das ist real. Ich weiß, es ist alles in a minute of Sheminus. Yeah, the language, Rav Kreskas language is biashlach kereim, yesh shini bashgucha ben azmanim, veyesh lo yemesheken. And of course, then he goes on to say that it's a shini is in the makabelim, not on God, but he still thinks that it's an objective reality that this time, for whichever reason, has some extra hashgucha. He calls it extra hashgucha. The Kizri wouldn't call it extra hashgucha. The Kizri would call it extra holiness or extra shuras hashchina and yin aliki. However, and the Rambam would say, no, it's a good time, you should be Mesoyer. He doesn't say it openly, but the Rambam more or less holds like this, and his Talmidim definitely mefarish it, beferish, l'derech zeh. So these are the three shittas, more or less, that we could find in the Kisvei Rishonim. And interestingly, they always go right away only to Shiva. So apparently, and this, I think this is like a social, and he says Psavot, andere Dalit Broken Beshun, all the Zmanim are really the same thing, because they all agree that theoretically all the Zmanim should be the same thing, but in the old-fashioned Judaism of the Zman Rishonim, the only time that people really took Ma'adim as a, Avodas Hashem was Zman Shiva. Comes to the Chassidim, then this is goes back to my other shmis about Shleish Hamidei Olam, right? How the Chassidim, they don't only believe in one of them, which is Avodah, and really there's other ones also. But it comes to the Chassidim, and they say Paisach is Avodas Hashem, Pirim is Avodas Hashem, Chanukah is Avodas Hashem. At least the reality, maybe in, Mekens, but in reality in Zman Rishonim, it doesn't seem like they took Paisach to be Zman of Avodas Hashem. Simcha, mit Abend a bissl mehr, weiß. Wasn't boiled to them the kasha by Paisach. That's what it seems to me. Why is
kasha only Avodas Hashem? I mean,
because I discussed this then. I think because right, but Chil Yom Tov nicht das Ara, because they don't think about Kedushas Shabbos. We're going to get to Shabbos Yom Tov in a minute. I'll show you. The Achronim talk about this question about Shabbos. And they don't think of Kedushas Yom Tov as something that has to do with God so strongly. That's really how it gets to. Kedushas Yom Tov is Zaychelitis Mitzrayim, so it's Kedushas Yom Tov literally Apei Elocha means Shvisam Melucha. We know what it means. So it's not, doesn't mean Kedushas Yom Tov doesn't mean it's heilig. Doesn't mean it's Mekenes Machalzan in the sense of doing a mass, of doing Melucha. That's Chil Shabbos, Chil Yom Tov. Yeah, but I think that they think about it in Olam Hazadige terms. It says Eichelit, it's Mitzrayim, Dank Da'ayim Shavit Mitzrayim, but it's not. I'm telling you, when you say Avodah Hashem, then you're right away. Okay, so is it? I'm a really good of I love, but say this much even more than a different day. Then you have a question, but they don't really see Kedushas Yom Tov as good of I love. That doesn't translate to them. Not obviously. If you learn Zohar, you'll see obviously yes, but in the Rambam, it doesn't obviously say that Shabbos is a Yom Kudav Lashem. This is language that says in Zohar for sure, but just for them, you were very used to think about things like this. I don't think that they think about it. Again, maybe Ba'omek is the same thing, but it's not, like I said, it's not boilet, it's not salient to them like this. I think that this is an important thing to think about. They're pretty happy with having Yemei Adam that are not only about Avodas Hashem, not only about God, it's about, ich weiß, I feel like denken Chidush Olam. It's not the same thing as saying that's really the whole question. What does that mean? The Pusik, by Kedushas Zman, Pashas Bereiches, right? Chlikes Rashi and the Ramban and the bringt of Sadigo and other people, right? What's the Bruch of Shabbos? What's Kedusha of Shabbos mean? Okay, but of course it is the same question in other times. So I want to try to show you some problems that people had with this and see where we can get with this. So let me try to say some so in some day dry shit is right. Let's try to clarify them, because try to be clear what they are. And the Shonim we seem to have. Maybe we should go inside, but I'm gonna get crazy about it. There seems to be these three shittas. So the Shitz Rambam is very simple. No such a thing. Now, does the Rambam really think that there's no such a thing? In other words, is there no change? There's no difference, and forget about God. Is there no real difference between one time and another in a way that's make negayat the Vaikas, or maybe there is.
Well, why do you think
It's not. Doesn't care about it so much.
Why do you think so?
Because ich weiß, in the summer it's more hot, so people feel ungezogen. And when ich weiß, these are real things.
Yeah.
Not way, yeah, but he doesn't care about this either. It's not okay. So I think that whenever we talk about these kind of Rambams, he wants to not be good at these kind of things, but he doesn't really think that there's no difference. Because it helps us a little bit. Okay, then let me try to verstehen. In haben the Kizri. What's the Kizri's way of thinking? The Kizri, at least in one, that's the one stick. What's the shtickle Kizri that I showed? That's really I want to get to. Kizri in Nugdenk 3. Schau ich some on paper.
Does she know?
No. What was the Kizri's language about? No, it was in Mamed Daled, the language, the shtickle that I showed you, and it connected it to Kizri and Mamed Daled spoke about, his context was really about how we get at God, right? Because he said, you don't get at God from understanding Him, you get at God from seeing Him or imagining Him. That's really where his context of Mamed Daled was. And his language was that we're just blind in some ways. So to him having God, to him seeing God or having Dvaikas is not about understanding. He says, the Philosophen sagen us, understanding is much better, but it's not true. Most people actually, right? That's what he says. It's not really true. People actually are misoiden more. That's really somewhat his language. Are more mispul and take it more seriously when you give them an image, when you give them a feeling. The Lowy, as das gesagt. And he sort of compares it to, this goes back to our shmis about Dimian and everything. He sort of compares it to seeing. That's really his way of thinking about it, right? He thinks about it as seeing, in the sense of ich sehe Gott. Nicht ich verstehe as is do and things like that. I just see him. Then, of course, right away you say, okay, so do you actually see him, or how come most people don't, or when do you? And the answer is that there's just like they're seeing Megashmis, they're seeing Besuge Berachnius. Again, how to actually define that is a bit of a problem. He himself is not sure how to define it, but and the fact that we don't see is just because we're blind. And sometimes we do see, and if we don't see, then we're soymach on the pikrim, the mensch was kennen ja sein. And sometimes I get the tzat or I get the tug, we kind of pick up orderly, and says even someone that does see needs light. That's sort of the idea they're saying here in Al Zayin, Mamed Al Zayin. And that the kmosh apik khif shel lirs shemesh leir lev lezelus velam dail habt hedrak betes es khalaf hayem and comes nicht kufen shel zrach. So since this really where it comes in to his whole theory, right? Since to him seeing God is not a matter of understanding that there is. Understanding that there is a universal thing. You have to have conditions for that, of course. Also, you have to be smart and everything like that. But it doesn't matter if it's day or night or and so on. It's just understanding. Right. But once he has the image of seeing, and seeing you have to have the right, has to be the right time. Even if you'll go to the blind, let's say he's learning how to see. Not exactly, that's what the Mushla of blind is. He's learning how to see. I could give you a hesper on that, but if you're learning how to see, then I can't tell you how to see at night. In other words, I'm truly in a chetzonistic reality. That's really a way of talking about this, right? In the philosophical way, in the pure cycle way, you're never waiting for the right time. Maybe you're waiting for the right tachunim. You need to know enough metaphysics in order to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, but you never say, "But yeah, I can teach you, but it's not the right day. Come back on Tuesday when it doesn't make sense." But if your idea of understanding God, of seeing God, is a more analogous to a literal seeing, then of course you could say, "Yeah, I want to show you the stars." If you go to astrologer, I want to show you the stars, but it's verwolkentan. It's just verwolken. It's not your fault. You're not even bad, right? Just verwolken. Come back in a nicht verwolkene day. I'll show you. And maybe then I'll be able to show you how you could see it even through the volcanness after. We could elaborate this mush a little more, but you need to find the right time. It's an empirical study, so you have to make sure that empirical conditions are correct for it. That's really why the Kizri thinks that's his whole way of thinking about everything, right? So he thinks that someone that's goy, someone that doesn't have the tradition, doesn't have the he wasn't there. It's very interesting that turns out, of course, people don't. There's always these achlifas in this, but it turns out that the Kizri has much less tanas on Avda V'Dezura and Goyim than the Rambam does, because the Rambam, since you're never waiting for the sun to come out. That's always a problem about you. But according to the Kizri, maybe didn't do anything wrong. Okay, and that's all. And that's it. Ad kana mushel. Vanem shli kana pikich ba'oreli hi yesh leitim memakoymes. Shebehem yira orahi. So there's times and places where you could see the light. So itim hein it is at tefillah. So b'chlal, so him interesting. He says both included is manat tefillah. In other words, this goes back to the Kizri's understanding of manat tefillah. See, we talk about manat shiva, but he starts like the fact that there's. And he really thinks like this, right? The Kizri and maybe the Sadiq and says things like this. And can ich daven in Mincha, man tefillah, right? The Chassidim don't hold like this. Because they think they're much more Rambamistisch. Generally, and they say, man tefillah, but tefillah is hachunah, yeah. You'll do enough his bonus, you'll do enough, go to the mikveh enough times, whatever, you'll have a good davening. The Kidri says, in the fence, what do you mean? You come to Shachris late, that's not a time to see God. The Kolshkim is my achieva, so in my achieva are days where tefillah works better. And the Koymas Anaviyah, meaning Eretz Yisrael, like he discusses about Yichas earlier. That's, if you're not in Eretz Yisrael, tough luck, basically. You could try, but Lamasse, that was not Eretz Yisrael. Right? So you have to have the correct technology.
He talks about it.
Yeah. Right, but he wants to bring back the Shechina. But at least to him, the first condition of bring, you see the big difference. That the Kizi thinks of bring Mashiach. He says, "Good, let's go to Yisrael." Otherwise, nothing starts. The Rambam do Chiva. Mashiach come and we'll try to meet the Besmigdash to get this out. To him, he says this openly, right? Mashiach will come after we come to Yisrael. That's the whole Shorish Machlokes. Yeah. It says in the end of the Sefer. Hirutza Avdei Chasavnei hat a touch in the Pusik. After Rutzi Avdei Chasavnei, because the chick of the Pidin That Yisrael will. Yeah, but what he really is getting at is, I think that's that if you have to. This is like a physical fact, like it does nothing to do with your tshiva. Yisrael is the place where Shara Shemaim is and Pusik. It doesn't work otherwise. So of course you have to go there, and like you're saying, it's nicht das Euget, wenn man an Nevi, but it's at least that's the first condition. You have to start somewhere. It's a Tanai, it's a real Tanai. It's not like a Matuna. It's a fact. This is a Platz, this is a Nevi. Okay, and then the Kizri, we went through this, I think. Then the Kizri says, so you're basically an astrologer. He says, yes, I am. I just think the astrologers have the wrong astrology. Right? In other words, in structure of the universe, he agrees that there are things. It's not just in your cycle. Of course, he doesn't agree with the Lav Dafka that your astrology is right, but okay, so this is what I'm trying to get at over here, and we still have to think about how he thinks about God himself in this, because you see, all Zmanim Kedushim and Mekayim Kedushim, the same logic. They're not a din in the person. Of course, maybe you have to have Achuna, maybe you also have to have Psaida, but it's not a din in the person, it's a din actually in the place and in the time. Right? Now, okay, Adkan Nikida Aleph, right? And he doesn't speak it in this language. Rav Kreska's language for this would be that there's different levels of Hashgacha for different people and for different times and for different places. And see, that's different when you talk about it as Hashgacha, because you're already closer in the Rambam's language. It's not saying that there's like the Himmel's hand fence that is not to do. He's sort of saying that this place is better for, it's still very similar. Maybe it's not the same thing. It's different. I don't understand entirely the whole shit of Rav Kreska, so I cannot sagen. Also it's insufficient, because I think he tries to make more particular kind of ideas, more real kind of ideas, more philosophically making sense. Some of that is my and better. Okay. So now I wanna get to a problem. This is where I want to get to here, and I think that the Kizri himself had this problem. And you tell me what you think the Teretz is according to these 2 or 3 different Hanuchas, basically. Okay. So the problem, and the Kizri, wie ist the Kizri? It's in Mamed himself seems to have asked this question, or not entirely. Wie read the Kizri wegen the Dateline, the Shabbos? No. Yeah? Yeah. No, it's in the second one. I'm a bias. Okay. The Kizri, I'll tell you how. So, let me make a stick like them, and then we'll see where we can figure out. Maybe I should do it like this. According to these 2 or 3 different ways of thinking about Kedushas Zman, right? What do you do with a question like this? And this is a question that Achronim ask explicitly in this way. I think the Kizri is getting close to this question. And it's right, everyone at least nowadays knows. But everyone knows that time is not the same for everyone in all places, right? So Shabbos.
Oh, you're saying the world.
The world, right? Shabbos is then Bamichas Shabbos, and then Yisrael is in Matar Shabbos, and vice versa.
I'm a flat earther.
You think the world that's always the same time for everyone?
Flat earther.
As well.
Yeah,
that's what it says in Psuchim.
Even the ganze Welt in a third, wegen bei jedem einen ist Chatzos. Chatzos is
that means the whole Yeshiv, but the Gemara didn't believe.
Right. So obviously,
but now we don't live in that Yeshiv, so what's the problem? Now we definitely don't live in that place where the Gemara is talking about, right?
Why? We all live in that little.
Not anymore. Because we live in America, which is on the other side. But we're where the sun goes at night to hide from them. We're where the sun goes at night to hide from them. That's what. On that night, according to one shit, the sun goes into the air, right? That's us.
What? Who said? This is
Machloikis, the guy into the air, that
it's all from Google. This is baloney.
Okay.
The governments.
Okay, so the Kizri doesn't just tracht as a video.
No. Okay.
Against it, no. So what? 1 second. 1 second. Let's talk about this question. Is this Bechlal? First, I want to understand if this is Bechlal question. So people ask this question in Doris Achroin, and people ask this question. They say, it's very nice to talk about. You tell me. So this is the Bezelschen. That's the Nachlas Yaakov. This is Nachlas Yaakov is a psaliket from Italienische tzadikim. That's what it is. Yeah, it's not one person. It's a bunch of people that lived in Italy, and about Shnas has dates here somewhere. Shin Mem Gimel, about 400 years ago. And they have, this is like a kovetz. It's like a kovetz. They go back and forth, and they're all being choiker in the shower. It looks like it's a little older than, I think the Ramak was a little before this, so it must be a little older than them. This is one early source that I found, but there might be even earlier. People ask this question. The Mabit asked this question. There's not Mabit, the Mabit's son, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Mabit, or Trani, which was, I don't remember what's his exact date. They ask as Ashot Shala, which is So you tell me, that wir schöner Schale. Die sagst mir Shabbos, so ist nicht Stamm Shabbos, mit Salzim Tag Shabbos, ist der Eibestadi, Shabbos in Himmel. Talk about Shabbos. It's the two states where they ask this question. One on Shabbos and second on Chtzas. You tell me that Shabbos, the Eibestadi, and Oilim and Elyon and Himmel, man rickt the Tischen in the bank and so wird wir starten gegeben or whatever, we stick by whatever. So it's this is Shabbos. And so when does this happen? Does it happen according to whose date time does it happen? Does it happen in Israel? Does it happen? I mean, obviously Shabbos, and if the Gemara, they bring always the Gemara, that the Gemara says, "I chelkimi machnise Shabbos betferhim et tzib betzipori." Even the Gemara, it's not it's very schwacher from that Gemara, because it's just about the mountain. But even the Gemara knew that Shabbos is a different time in every place. Okay, actually, it's schwacher, like you said, it's very schwacher because that's not about the date line. It's just about they saw the sun. It's a mistake, really. It's not. It's really a chimera, right? Alibba the emes, they should both have the Shabbos at the same time. The chayre. Here's the studying the whole Chakira about the sun. Okay, actually, we know that it's like this, okay? When the Shabbos here an hour later, it's going to be Shabbos in Chicago or whatever. So, and it's Van Vickman, the bank in Himmel. What's going on? Either we have a fake Shabbos, or the whole Epis guy before. Outkan, Akash, Zelshan Akash. Or the same thing. It says in Zoy that Bechtzas, the Eibte Kim Tarhan Ganaiden, es sei Zrutzen, es Titzach Levedik. What do you mean Bechtzas? Bechtzas Avu. So you tell me if this question Bechlal begins to make any sense, according to, and we could think according to this different ways of thinking about Kedushas Zman that we learned from Shoyanim.
I mean, according to if you.
A minute, so forget it. But, okay, they're talking about the astronomy. Let's assume, forget about the world is round. Okay, let's say there's different in a square world and somewhere else there's a different. Let's assume that this is the fact. If you want to be chilik on the fact, then anachanam, it's not schwer. No, it's like interesting because I want to ask this question. This is really one of the questions that I ask a lot of times. What's like a the pshat and nobody asked this question until Shnas Shein? Yeah.
Listen, you know the Kedushin Kedusas Zman. There's all less.
The what?
The Wolf less in the top for Noy to be here.
No.
So that's a Kedushin Kedusas Zman. There's two chivas from the Noy to be the same.
No.
Outside of Shidim in Zmanim and Zmanim and what else? Chudosh, it's a very interesting side. They just reprinted it. So he has a whole thing. Yeah, that the world is flat. The world is flat. So it's like a kegel, like a kleine.
Wer ist das? Can Mark Shapiro?
No, I saw it.
He writes about things like that. Okay, no.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, the world is flat. It's a disc. The world basically is a disc.
Okay.
He's already an astronomer. So I'm just saying, you know. There were some people that thought the world is flat.
Okay. I mean, the kids actually didn't think, but there were some people.
Yeah.
I'm in it. So these oaks, so this is one teretz. You say, nah, it's nicht angefangen keine Deka.
No, he was coming,
La Fika da Picardum that they're saying that it's wrong.
Yeah.
What's it called? Razu?
Okay.
Okay. Oops, I can't do this because. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that so it's definitely true that historically the people that start asking this question and again in like Shnas Shein, the reason they start asking is because they say we know a little better.
More and more, it became like more of a metzias of they realized that different places are different.
Because people actually started traveling.
Yeah, it's not like actually vice doctors think very nice. I mean,
so this is I'm
do Shabbos is noch Shabbos in Europe. I mean Telegram, whatever. I mean, whatever they know. It was,
okay, so that's one. There was no Telegram in Shnas Shein, but yeah. Okay, so that's one. Yeah, there were people traveling and things like that. That's only one, but that's one way of thinking about it. I have a different way of thinking about it because it's true, like you're saying. These people did, but the Rambam wasn't confused about how the world works, and neither was the Kizri. They all understood that it goes around and everything, and they didn't have this question. See.
Right.
So that's true. You're right. Of course, it's true that Lamas said the words. For some reason, people still, like you said, it started to become real that their times are not the same. People didn't think about it. It wasn't on people's minds before. It started to become real. In Kolzeh, that the people earlier definitely understood how these things work, and they still didn't seem to be bothered by a question like this. Maybe the Kizdi was, we'll get to it, but they didn't seem to be bothered by a question like this at all. So let's try to think. I'm just trying to think here. I don't know. So let's try to think. Lefijat the Rambam. push it that the kasha doesn't begin, right? Maskem?
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah, even the Rambam is right. Even about Shabbos, what would the Rambam say?
We'll have a minute. We could have a. We still can we halt haben a minute. Get a minute. That we give keep Shabbos whatever different times.
Exactly. What would the Rambam say? Of course, the Rambam would say seriously. The Shaish my Bereich of Chalal Mutzla anyways, and Ice Roots was mine. So mine that this Chiva. It was like I say, and there's not. So when is it Ice Roots? When you do Chiva. If you don't do Chiva, it doesn't help that you're in the right time, right? And if you do the Chiva, that we have to make time. We live in the world that there's time and stuff like that. But there's nothing happens in Himmel in a real way. So the Kasha have to Chashtum Bechlal. That's a push at the Lefish Rambam's way. And by the way, this is something that we have to get at actually. I think the Halacha, and this is very relevant to the whole, the whole debate of how. Because of course a lot of people will come and say, seriously, this is a pekars, this meint this. After the Rambam zu getracht, because they will not go and look, the philosophy Arire at him Mathe given. Of course, the Shatoyer says that Shabbos is heilig, or you tell me it's not really heilig, we just pretend that it's heilig. What does that even mean? Right? A lot of people think that the Rambam is generally very not part of the standard Jewish way of thinking, but I'm pretty sure, at least this is a good example, that the Halacha thinks Halacha until a few Achronim came around. Halacha and Chazal definitely think like the Rambam. Chazal definitely don't seem to care about when the real Kedushas Shabbos is. They very much are very clear that you could. Samiriks machen 2 Tage Yom Tov, so 2 Tage. What do you mean? When is the chalas of the later Achronim? They really have a problem with this. When is the chalas of the oides that calm down? Chabad, yeah. Chabad, they talk about this before. When is the oides come down? The first when the Rashash got into a whole trouble with Sfiras Omer, remember? Not the Rashash, the other the Rashash had got Rafat Eretz, but the Ramami Pan, whatever. What do you mean? There's a whole oides Paisach, and then we can't like Sfiras Mel decide what's going on. Well, let's count it after myself to slash Rafat Eretz. This whole complication, it doesn't seem Sha'ulal da. Sometimes they say Tarta Desastre, that's just for social reasons. We don't do Zweike man Sfiras Omer because come on, what's kind of sense?
In the second
right. Right. But that's not because they have a real problem. That's because they understand that people are going to stop being Mazal's Yom Tov, things like that.
Also, make up your mind. You can't do a snaggis, a soy so big and
okay. Because it has to make some sort of sense. But if included, they totally don't have a problem. This is a good example. Yom Tov is the Zecher. I mean, the Choyra Pi, and when it was really so, it was Yom Kippur, so we don't do it because there's a problem with fasting 2 days. It's a schwere Sache, but if included, I mean, they didn't for Rishon. By the way, there's a Ferische Gemurah, but Rishon, they said it's openly. This is the Rambam and the Miri all quoted. There's the Medrash says, ein Besen shel mal nach Nussel, den atsche Besen shel mat kaufen. So okay, we can learn the member in 2 Wegen. You could read it in their simple pshat that the Besen shel mal waits for the Besen shel mat to decide when it's Rishon, right? Or you could say like the Miri says, it's here the bed, then nicht dort. Right? But let's live the Shnai and they're not worried about conforming to the real what happens in Himmel. They're very, very much totally b'shamayim. Very much. We can treffen andere Mamur Chazal, but both include the Halacha. Shabbos, even though Shabbos, very much seems to work with this kind of way. They're never. I can't think in Efshem. Actually, they are treffen. I'm saying about the Dinner Shuna. Even that, they don't seem to be worried about. Macht a mistake. There's no truth that they're trying to get at. They definitely believe. Again, you could say this in 2 ways. I think that. That's a good question. In which way does it really mean that we decided in? It doesn't mean that God has to do what we do. But I feel the zweite Weg, right, which is better than the more close to the pshat, right? Like I'm giving you an example of this gemura. It's also in the gemura, the shonans in the matter that the Besen Shel Malek makes the din when we tell them that it's Rish Chodesh, yeah. Right. So the Rabbamistish way is to still deny that there's a Besen Shel Malek in a real sense, right? But when under the what we talk about Besen Shel Malek is a way that the Besen Shel Mata talks about it. Kadash this oiram, this is the emes. The emes is allemal do adir. Also the media is the emes of Rabbi Yosef with Michal Yom. This is I started this. Okay. What's then the emes the gepshat? Pshita shel mikro, pshita shel divrei chazal, not like that. Pshita shel medrash is that the Besen Shel Malel sits and waits for the Besen Shel Mata, and then they do it. Then stippt man the beinklech and yashvik esus la mishpat and macht a mishpat, right? But in kol zeh, Phillips is azoi. The Besen Shel Mata, same thing Shabbos. When is the let's ask, when is Shabbos? When is this? When the when we blow the shofar and we say now it's Shabbos. if we'll make toys for Shabbos, then maybe we'll have toys for Shabbos. I don't know. The Chikiris, the Chikiris, if toys for Shabbos makes really Shabbos or not. The halacha is never trying to conform to a abstract truth, to a real behind them. Because I feel like if they do believe that there's a truth, nicht as the Rambam would say, there is no reality, it's all about how we understand it. But even if there is a reality, they have even a more crazy, radical idea that reality listens to us, and nicht verkehrt, right? So therefore, if you would ask the Rambam, if you would ask this Gemura, this Chazal, right? Not only the Rambam. If you ask Chazal, see, that would be different than the Rambam, but still, if you ask Chazal, when is Shabbos? When is the real Din Rishuna? Right? Was the same question, right? When is the real Din Rishuna? For the Meirikani, and when is the Chsimus Adin? You tell them that there's for each. Nobody asked this question. When is the Chlois Mishreit Chasmaini? It's real fast Mishan Kegel, yeah? Was heißt the Gescheit vor? People are worried about this question, actually. And what's the teretz? For the Rambam, the teretz is the Shrein mach the Chasmain, yeah? For the Medrash, the teretz would be the Choyre. It's a stroll, for the stroll, chast mit Eibische Demmels, for Demmels Shrein sein, for uns chast mit der Demmels. For Demmels auch den sehr best, Demmels machen. And if we do 2 days, whatever, we'll do twice. I weiß nicht exactly how it works. They're totally not worried. You see, the Shuna, it's a good example for this. The Shuna, if it's a stroll, if we pshat halacha, whatever, we do 2 days, because it's still a sufik, and the Shuna is the day of the Yom Adin, and nobody says be worried about this. So when is the din? Ich weiß nicht. Wenn bloß schon für 2 Tage besucht die ganze, everything we do twice. Whatever. They're totally not even worried. You see, 2 days of Rishon is a good example because you don't have to say maybe they didn't know, they thought the world was flat. So what do they think? So it didn't bother them at all. I think that this is very much closer to the Rambam way of thinking, where at least in Lamasa, again, there's a Befshanach Alikot. At least in Lamasa, they're not thinking of us trying to, right? They believe in the metaphysics maybe, but they're not worried about it. They're not avudim of the metaphysical existence. And I think they might have said something similar to about the Beis Hamikdash and things like that. Hello. It's a good question if Chazal would be masking or the Kizri that we can't have Nevi'ah because there's no Beis Hamikdash and Gunar and Yisrael and things like that. I think that a lot of the memories like Mikdash Ma'at, the Shechina is in Bovel, but what does Shechina do? Wer ist für die Shechina wie zu sein? Eins. The Kizri very clearly says, like he says, the astrologers are right. There is a metaphysical structure of the world. The Shechina comes to a fence in Himmel, like the language, and the fence, you can't move the fence there. Chazal would say, yes, there's a fence. The Rambam would say, there's no fence there. You have to say that chair is broken. This is Ana Kisa Shulam. The Rambam would say, there's no Himmel. The fence that is in your mind. Or the Baal Shem Tov would say things like that, right? The Baal Shem Tov was a radical Rambamist, you know, right? Who? The Baal Shem Tov was a radical Rambamist. Everything is in your mind. If she says, "Oh, do a Himmel," so again, we could be like Chazal more, right? Chazal would say, "It's do a fenster in Himmel," but the Chum could move it.
But even a Rashash has something that the Smaila stoops to prove.
The Rashash, yeah, but the Rashash is in general. I'll give you a good example, a lot of examples about this. The Rashash, yeah, but side it, but that's a. Very busy, but then there's still, let's say, yes, but the Rashash, okay, the Rashash is included much more Kizri in this way. The Rashash doesn't think that you could change things. The Mushal, the Chtzas, we're going to talk about Chtzas. The Chassidish Rebbes are very much Chazal in this sense. Again, this to talk about the example of Chtzas, right? The Zohar says that the Chtzas comes up the Bashefer and the Rashash doesn't have no Chachmas. But after Ovshna Yin took Chtzas and even changes the halacha for that, right? You know, he changes the halacha. You say Pshish B'Shal Mitte. He doesn't say if you go to sleep. If you go to sleep after Chtzas, according to Rashash, you don't say Pshish B'Shal Mitte. You don't say at least Pamap or whatever. Right. That's what they do. Right? It's obviously not like this. The halacha is sicher nicht da sein, right? He says, but ich look auf der Bruch auf den Himmel. So you can say a teret, maybe my Himmel. He doesn't think of that teret of my Himmel. You see? He says, maybe you do believe, you're wrong, you're just wrong.
Saying my Himmel? If you don't have this whole structure altogether, what's that?
No, there is a structure. In the Rashash, there is a structure.
No, I'm saying, if you're, according to what you're saying now, at least I thought.
I'm saying too, there's 3 shittas. I'm saying that there's 3 shittas. Yeah. There's shittas haramam that there's no Himmel. There's a Himmel, but the Himmel is general, is metaphysic, is myth shit. When we said the Himmel come to me, I mean to say I understand the Himmel today. It's all, everything is in you. Everything is in your Achuna and your Avodah. Things like that. There's no human Kedushim, there's no Mokoyim Kedushim. Mokom Kedush is just in the sense that we go to Beis Hamikdash, we think about God and so on. That's shittel number 1, right? Shittel number 2, stimmt?
Right, there is nothing.
Right. Right, there is no. It's not. We have to always remember. There's not. There's no himmel. There's a himmel, but the himmel doesn't change from Sunday to Monday. The himmel changes, and for you, if you're thinking about it, then it's by you. What does it mean to be close to God? And I says this openly. That means to think about Him, right? So God doesn't come closer and further ever.
You come.
Exactly, you come closer, and what even that doesn't literally mean. It just means you're thinking, right?
That's the most closest.
As I the Rambam.
You're with him, sort of. You're under him. What is it called?
In reality, you're always under him. See, you could read the Rambam backwards, like the Chassid Ashkenaz would say. In reality, I'm like I'm just saying, you shouldn't say the Rambam says there's no himmel. Still a himmel. A himmel, there's a God, whatever exactly Prat you're talking about. But it just doesn't change. The only thing that changes is you. He's always close to you. We could say it like this. If you want to say Chassidus and Nessach, the Rambam says the Eibush is always close to you, no matter. It's true, by the way. It is true.
No, it's not.
Yes, but you see, but that depends. But that depends if you care about your cycle. If you care about your cycle. No. What do you mean? There is a God. God exists. You see, God exists prior to you. But in the actual reality. If there would be no people, where would God be?
God's the same way with people, without people.
Exactly. So He's all over. The Chassid Ashkenaz explicitly did this. They did this switch.
God doesn't mean Him where He's there.
For you, because you have forget. Because so we could take in the Chassid. I'm saying just the reality is still like this. For you, because if you're worried about He's not in your cycle. For you to understand, which means for you to grasp God in a human way, forget about Hashgacha, forget about any of this. Existence of God exists all over in the same way. Exactly.
Existence of Him is all over.
He's not all over.
When we say close to, we don't mean that.
For our subjective understanding. Of course, Tim's understanding is not entirely subjective, but for our understanding, but mitzad, like you said, it's always true. I just want to say this because it's not true that everyone is so. It's not a good way to think.
No, God is not with someone when he's not.
Of course he is. Of course he is. For you, but not in reality. For you, because in reality, let's give the physical account of the Rambam's God's relation to the world. Right? God is the reason for everything to exist. The ultimate reason, of course, there's a list of reasons you have to go through the whole science to get to God, but the ultimate reason for everything existing is God. Right?
Everything is Samech, you mean?
Yeah. Samech in the metaphysical sense, in the ontological sense, right? That is true if you know about it. If you don't know about it, it's always true.
Of course, but that's not what I mean. That's not make you close.
That is what, of course, of course.
It's all Him.
Yeah, he's the reason for it being.
It's His reason.
No, but everything is the same close there. There's no.
And a chanami. That's why I'm saying another way of saying that everyone is fast, that everyone is close, even if you do a virus. I'm just saying the Rambam. It really leads from the Rambam's shitta that God is in Chitzlur just like he's in Eretz Yisrael. Because I was the Chitzlur in Eretz Yisrael. The Chilik is in your mind. But if your mind would have been in a Chitzlur, and maybe it's not past, but maybe for physical reasons, the Rambam says he thinks the real reason there's no Nevi in Chitzlur is because people are sad, right? In Gulis, the Rambam says this. Sibah Kroiva, he says that to Sibah Kroiva for Bittul Nevi'ah because people are sad, because if you don't have power, then I feel that even the most happy person is Nach Nebuch, man. Okay, Nach Leinanim. Just quick. Yeah, because this is the Rambam's Alpha. There's tissues over there in the corner, and the guns in the corner. Yeah, because their whole that's Alpha Rabbi's whole political theory that is that you can't be happy unless the palate is happy. It's not possible. Maybe it's for Yechidim is FCA, but boy from Klad. So there's three shittas, right? One shit is that there's no time. There's no difference in the real difference in time. The second shit is that there is, and therefore I forgot where I am. I was in the middle of saying something because I wanted to get to the ice roots, right? According to the Rambam, nothing happens by Chitzas. You wake up and God comes the side, but nothing happens in the reality outside of your mind. According to the
which one? What's the middle one? You want to do the middle one or the other extreme?
I just said according to just to be clear, according to the other extreme, there is by Chitzas came the Eibush and Gan Eden. If nobody's there, you're gonna be mad, but it came. It doesn't ask you, right? Doesn't wait for you, doesn't care, right? That shit is a rashash. Chitzas is Chitzas. That's mayash. That shit is a kizri also. It's roll. That's roll. With nothing you can do about it. According to shit is Chazal, which is shit Chassidus. Both of them are true. In other words, of course there is. Yeah, I'm going to show you. 1 second, a minute. According to Yitzchok Chazal, so do a fenster in Himmel. God sometimes really comes. It's not. You're not imagining it. You're not just mitzidchu. It's mitzidai also. That's another language of saying it. But it doesn't follow rules. It follows your rules more than it follows its own rules. Right? If we're gonna want to bring Shechina in Bovel, we'll bring it. We're the ones that decide. Torah Leba Shmaim means that we can tell God what to do, right? Torah Leba Shmaim, you see there's 2 reasons of Torah Leba Shmaim. One says Torah doesn't care about what's in the Shemaim. Another one says the Torah is Nimsa Luni. We decide what the Himmel does, right?
Well, Pasha Pshat is the Shemaim no longer has a day here.
Exactly, but we have the diet to them.
Right.
We could tell God what the halacha should be. Halacha. So the modern pshat, which is the Ramistic pshat, is that the halacha is about olam hazeh, not about Torah and Hashemayim. Torah was from Himmel, now it's here. Now it's human. But the other pshat is no. It starts by the humans, but it doesn't finish there. The humans tell God what the halacha should be, and that's actually what the halacha will be. If we'll sit around now with and say that David HaMelech is not Einach Halakal Haba, he won't have a halak. That's in Sanhedrin, right? He has to come and beg us to put him back. If the Rambam will say that the minim gar nicht Olam Haba, the Rambam thinking this is crazy. Like this story about the Rambam warf nach ran, warf nach raus. This is not how the Rambam thinks, but how we... No, because they're not masking to this.
Of course.
No. Of course not. Because the Kizri thinks that everything is very real. And you can't change around things. You can't make chtzas whenever you want. You see the Chassidish Rebbe that said, yeah, and the Zohar state that chtzas is the end, but by us chtzas is the first half of the night. You know what Chassidish sayings? Is a guy there? Man sagen, man schon tacken, wenn der zweite Halb. Nach jetzt am Tag der erste Halb nach. All kinds of random like sayings like this, but they're really getting at Chazal's way of thinking. Yeah, of course there's ice roots, but ice roots says we can make it also. Auf Schwarten, the Himmels on ice roots. Let's machen. We can change things around. We can make it Mantfille, and they're not saying there's no Mantfille. That's maybe one the Chabad shit. The Rambam shit would be his Mantfille. When you daven, that's his Mantfille. Chassidish shit. What's the halacha is? I think that halacha is close to the Chassidish way of understanding. Actually, not the halacha is not Rambam, not Chabad, not God is always everywhere, anyways, and just you think about it. That's the main thing, and also not the opposite that everything is like the Rashash. If you wake up after Chtas, you missed it. You have to be always the Kedushas Chtas. That's when it happens. The Yichud. Nor there is a yichud, and it happens when we make it happen. If we wake up late, then Chasas wakes up late also. That's what Halacha. By the way, the Halacha is like this, more or less. Of course, the Halacha is connected to the sun, but the Halacha recognizes that the Chacham could do whatever they want. And like I was keep on saying, the Halacha, when they decided that there's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, nobody asked this question until 500 years later. The Zohar asked the question, but until the Zohar, which is 1,000, whenever it was, nobody decided. Okay, Halacha, there's no kasha. When is the din? Rosh Hashanah is about when does it happen? When the first day or the second day? What's the pshat from this? When does the din happen? The Gemara literally says the din happens when you daven misif. 1 second. And the Gemara says in Avodah, right? It says that the din happens when you daven misif. Shtayt the Gemara. No, so the first day misif, the second day misif. Shtayt nicht das begin Yom Then it says...
We don't know. One or the other.
No.
Well, today, that's not second day, I don't know.
What do you mean today?
We don't have any something. What are we doing?
No, but in the beginning they did it because they didn't know there was a problem.
Okay, but what do we do now? What do we do now?
No, they didn't ask right away the question because in the beginning it wasn't really negaya. That's now.
I hear you're saying maybe we don't know when the din is. We try, but okay. But now that we do know, nobody asked. Okay, so I mean, it's worth it. They made a cheshbon that the shekel of Shemiach whatever. It's worth to continue having the Yom Tov. So you make Pirim of Yom Tov. According to the Kabbalistic understanding of Yom Tov, this is gemacht Pirim. You make Pirim of Yom Tov. Yom Tov is that the ganze Pamali Shemala comes down and listens to us saying the Shira Siyam or Shvishal Bayisach, and hey, you know what? Noch amor. What's the Pirim? It's not much Pirim. It's like the Rashash looks at the Chassidish that says Chtzos. Yeah, Chtzos is on Fira Zayge. Who says it? He's making Pirim. And the Halacha doesn't have this problem at all. And you want to ask about Mantfila? I don't think the Halacha thinks that Mantfila is because the Bachlal, Mantfila is not real Halacha. You really know that.
Let me say something. Even when you say Chatzos is Fira Zayge, you're saying Chatzos is Fira Zayge.
Yeah, because Chatzos is a Mushel.
No.
Chatzos
I mean, there's
Mushel.
something, we're talking about something, there is something here.
Right.
Of course.
Somehow you could,
Yes.
like a
That's what I'm saying. It's not the Rambam, but Chatzos is not a time. It's a misig. It's a misig, not a misig. It's a thing in Himmel. It's like Yichud Yisrael V'lai, whatever. It's like Yichud B'Chatzos.
Why wasn't the Siachet of Chatzos more than any other hour?
Because Grad, by that is he woke up then. That's why I was by him then. By the way, people said this is fetish.
That's the Kind doesn't have Chatzos.
No.
There is something by Chatzos.
That's not
It's a mushel. Chatzos is a mushel.
No, he's saying Chatzos can be 4 o'clock.
Chatzos is a mushel.
Chatzos is nothing.
It can be 4 o'clock in the afternoon also.
Exactly.
Chatzos is a mushel.
No, if a clown like goes, yeah.
Chatzos is a mushel.
But that's not like Pashas not like that. Pashas there is a Chatzos, but Chassidim sort of how they can hook on to Chatzos like through at 4 o'clock, so or sort of also like Mafreya.
No, there's a real. I'm saying there's a real existence of B'chinas Chatzos, B'chinas Yichud, whatever the Rizal says the Yichud of Chatzos is, and that Yichud doesn't have. It's not connected to time. It's really the Malam Nazman. They did Bechtzos because he did it Bechtzos. If you'll do it at a different time, it'll work the same way. If you'll be Mechav and Kavunas
Why do
Chatzos,
you pick Chatzos?
because to him it worked out that way, not because it's truly Bechtzos.
Because it's better.
No. Maybe it's also.
I know you're saying that.
Maybe it's also. Maybe it's also. No, it's better. Of course, it's better in the sense there was some reason why he picked it to be that way, but it's the shmechrech. It's not because in Himmel it's like that. That's the point. It's not better. It's because for him, it was better like that. By the way, this is obviously true about Shvat. I'll show you this. This Nachasaki has someone that says literally this Shvat Nachasaki. Ich wünsche der erste Bekoide so good. But okay, that's the three opinions. So now.
What's the Pshat you say? You can say Korbanos and it's either for Korbanos.
No.
Korbanos being based on Migdash. He said this man based on Migdash. You also could do this. You could be Korbanos and it's blocking Korbanos. He wanted to tell. I got to say. He said something like this. He said when there's no halacha, then it goes back like Kodim Matan Tanya. Like you could do maklois for tefillin. So tefillin, so to Korbanos now you can't do b'poil anymore. So now it's
free.
No. He won't say that type of hook wasn't bottle of gamri. There's still
Right, so now we're free.
Okay, but that's another.
Now we're free.
Wait a second, but that's another question. Give me a second.
Yes, now we're free.
I don't know if
I'm
it's.
trying to say is you can have both. I'm trying to bring
Ich bin nicht sicher how it interfaces with this point. I didn't think through. I did think that it's a similar question about Pruti, all of the mitzvahs, but I don't know if it's the same exact thing. Because I'm not really talking about doing the idea of a mitzvah in a different state, in a different television. What I'm talking about is
right. That's
if the metaphysical. No, I'm not saying. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that there's three shittas. I wanna get to something. I don't know if it's the same exact thing. But if it's the same, if it's the same concept or not. I'm not entirely sure. Can bring him else today. I'm not sure. I have to think it is through better. But let's get to the thing with Shabbos and Chatzos. So. There are 3 ways of thinking about it. There's another way of thinking about it that I have, 4th way. Let's do it now. So if, according to all these 3 ways, what's the teretz of the kasha that these people started to ask? When is the real Shabbos, right? When is Shabbos in Himmel? So some people in the Echraim started asking a question, when is Shabbos in Himmel? Is it when Shabbos in Lakewood or when it's Shabbos in Los Angeles or in Africa or wherever? Or in Israel, right? So, if the Shabbat doesn't exist, then of course the Kasha doesn't begin, right? That's where I got to this whole thing. I think that the Halacha is closer to this. Or if Shabbat does exist, but it's decided by us, again the Kasha doesn't begin. Could it be 2? Yeah, it's kind of I don't think the Chazal, B'chlal myth, this kind of way of thinking doesn't get into these logical problems. Where is God? They would have like, wie is the Shechina in Mechem Besmedrash? Remember, there's a guy that asked Rabbi Gamliel this question, right? Kama Shechina Eslechi? It's like yeah? This is another question, right? Why is it not a question? You gave him an answer with the Zin. It's such a kind of serious question, right? Even if the Shechina really comes in Besmedrash, could it be in the same time another Besmedrash? Yeah, it could be. God is never busy in one place. If you're one of the big klulim, even if you read it in the most akshumadik way possible, it's still not a question that if it's in one place or one time, it can be in another time in the same. Well, that's the most basic. Even the Greek myths don't have this question. I feel that the most basic is sort of God is that it could be in 2 places at one time. This is sicher. If he's not in any place at all, this is not zweite Chekira. But this is sicher as he can be in 2 places at one time. Nobody ever asked the question, And over the Zura they had even Catholics have things. There's Our Lady of Chweisbus and the God von so kein is busy dort. I can't nicht do. Statt das Sach. Selbe Gott kann sein in the Besmikdash do, and it's Kenzan and dort, and this is Kasha. The same thing, even if you believe that it's real, the real Shabbos or real Chitzas, still the Tzaddik, the Eibusher is mit Chitzas, mit the Tzaddikim was lernen in Lakewood, when they make Chitzas, and the Eibusher is mit Chitzas, when the Chitzas lernen it's Yisroel, but Chitzas, Kasha doesn't begin, right? When does the Kasha begin? Only if you have the Kizri's way, if you have the middle way, right? And you think, besides, it's real, and for some reason you're not even happy with it being real in some way, that the pipe was guy tzaddik, guy in the tzat, because it's real, it's in Himmel, when guy is when is gescheit, then you start having a question, right? Then maybe it's a kasha, right? Now what kind of teritzim did people find for this kasha? So I think like this. The Heilige Kizri, I think was worried about this kasha in a certain way, not in exactly the same way, because he sort of asked a different question, but I think that he was worried about something like this, and I wanna.
So before you say that, this question bothers you?
It doesn't bother me.
Okay, because it could be halal also, no?
It doesn't bother me because I'm a Rambam's
no,
das ist Karai von mir. Oder der zweite, weiß nicht. I think that's a stickle question in the Shittas HaKizriya.
Why? There's something Lamaila, but it's the Kalim.
Wait, but the moment you say Kalim, what I'm saying was no. Chabad actually, there's another mama where they recognize that it's not a good teretz. I'll tell you why. Yeah, the Baltani himself noticed that this is not a good teretz, and the Baltani himself realized that this is not a good teretz, and for this reason, yeah, and for the reason it's with lange mama, you figure out there's two and shulchan aruch. I'll tell you, it's not a good teretz because then you're reverting to the Rambam. That's why it's not a good teretz.
Reverting to the Rambam.
Yes, this is the problem with this teretz, because. Of course, you could posit some sort of like that. My image is always of that becher where you megist aran and get a kleine becher. You could always have such an image where yes, there's a real, but that's a Rambamistisch image. Because the basic Kizri idea, the Shechina is in Eretz Yisrael ve'yoim. Let's think about it. It's a megishim, the way of thinking, but that's how he wants you to think, right? And at least an imaginary way, he wants you to think the Shechina literally comes on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Rosh Hashanah, and the Bishmul Kohen Gudel, das ist gedacht, right? The Eibishter kommt in Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and damals geschieht die Sache. And when does he come? When it's his Yom Kippur, not a mifshetige thing. The moment you say, this is all mifshet that comes to everyone in their time, then you're very close to the Rambam's way. Or maybe you're literally in the Rambam's way, because you're again saying that there's no real, you might as well be mevatel the whole time. Why do you need the whole time b'chlal? Just for no reason, there's no use in just adding an extra step. You might as well say that the Eibush is Almo Yom Kippur, and sie kommt zu uns, wenn ins Trachten wegen dem. Why do you bichlal? You understand what I'm saying? You're just adding an extra step, making things very complicated for no reason, and it's sort of useless. Was hast du gesagt? Das stimmt, was ich gesagt? I mean, Lamal Nazman is Rambam. The Kizir is not Lamal Nazman. It says Yazman. God himself was Lamal Nazman. But talking about God's Hifur. Everyone agrees that God himself is Lamal. God coming is Bezman. That's literally what it means. Otherwise, once you go back to being Lamal Nazman, the time he realizes that he says this beferish in Torah's Chaim, and you see that teret that he said in Tzulchan Charav is not a good teret. Because he just back to Lamal, once Lamal Nazman, then again there's no Kedushas Zman. There's Kedushas Ha'udam. Kishem is born in Bezah, he realizes it. Beside, then you're back in the Rambam's territory. Unless you make like a 3-step, like you say, there is Ein Zaf Nifshit, and there is Kedushas Zman, and then the Kedushas Zman comes up. Then what would be the point of this whole elaborate three-tier structure? The Kizir definitely doesn't have such a structure. To him it's real. To him the Eibush in the West Mikdash, nicht in andere Plätze. Nicht gehele wie viel das Mchama sagen, wie viel mit Tfilis es zu, wie viel Bakush es zu machen. It's not gonna happen, right? And Shabbos, and all these Kedushas Zmanim, because they're real to him, they're real. So this is not a good teretz for the Kizri's way of thinking. It's a good teretz by confusing the Kizri's and the Rambam's ways of thinking. And again, you could make some sort of elaborate three-level thing, but it doesn't seem to be a reason, and it's not clear that that's going to help anyways. Because again, ask the same question between 2 and 3. Ask the same question: how much is it real or not?
Once the double mufshid, you're saying just leave it mufshid and say gesund. Why?
Once it mufshid, then you're back to saying there's not real Kedushas Zmanim. That's subjective. I used to call it subjective. That it's lefi kavuna, lefi mukam, and it's not real. Then why do we need it? Why? You understand?
There is a Shabbos Elyon, the Shabbos, whatever you want to call it, the Shabbos Elyon, and then every place where it becomes Shabbos Lamata is Makabal.
Right, but then there's no Shabbos Elyon. That's basically what you're saying. It's not. It's shukal to saying there's no Shabbos Elyon. Because Shabbos is a mystic in time. Shabbos, the mystic of Shabbos is that there is times that it's Shabbos and there's times that there's not Shabbos.
No, we have this thing of Kabbalah.
That's the mystic. It's a time. It's the same thing of time. No matter if you call it Kabbalah, he says this. I'll show you. He realizes that this is a problem. Then the end he sort of says a 3-level teretz, but I think it's not a good teretz either. Let's say it's not time. It's something that corresponds to time. It's still saying your days and ish the ends.
Right.
Then you're saying, then you're Then
you're saying what? Then you're saying not like the Rambam.
Right, and then it might as well be in this and not that. Then it has to be in one place. Of course, you understand what I'm saying? Then it has to be in one place at one time. In one way, not in another way. How are you mixing up these two shittas?
What do you mean?
With a mikdash you can only have in one place, but Shabbos you can have in many places.
Why? Why could?
Because that's the way it's and why? What's the chacham of that?
Then it's also Shabbos. It's Saturday. That's Saturday. Then that's
the extra 6 days of work now.
No, now you're saying a different thing.
It's Nizgala. Like it's Nizgala.
Nizgala is an Rambam language. Nish Nizgala. Yeah, because you have to talk about reality, not about Nizgala.
What's wrong with the middle? Let's say.
The middle way might be able to work. I'm not sure. I think it's just weird. Like just like let's add the Oilem Rambam and the Oilem. According to the middle way, still the last step is the Rambam is right? Then it's still not real, right? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Shabbos Lamala. It's just I don't know what it is. When I say when, I'm talking about the when here, right? It's just saying it's just this is Shabbos. There's a certain type of Zman Lamal. We're not mamish connected to that, but but we experience. Then it comes Lamata in certain experiences.
If you say the word experience, that's not a good word. You have to say that there's a chok. If you want the third word to work, you have to take out the word experience and take away the word Lamal and Azman, because that doesn't help you at all. It's not helping at all. Could be that not. That's not relevant to me. Totally not relevant. I know, but it's not. I'm in it, but it's not relevant.
Why?
I'm telling you, he himself realized that this is a problem because it's not relevant. Lamal and Azman. If there's two ways that you could say, either it's Lamal and Azman. This is Shittas Rambam. Shabbos is nishkan, doesn't exist in the Himmel upstairs. There's no time Shabbos. There's not even a distinct thing of Shabbos, right? Because time is just another way of saying. Time, the Olam Hazeh also doesn't exist, and time is just a way of dividing things, right? There's no divisions either. Like it likes to say, right? He without it. Du kannst, es bonus, whatever this bonus of Shabbos is. If you'll be misborn on Shabbos, has to so much, nicht or you'll do it, the actions that correspond, whatever it is. But there's nothing real that happens. There's not even a real correspondence that happens on Shabbos between this one and that one. It's only in your mind, right? Okay. That's the Lamal Azman theory, right? Okay. Then there's another theory that says, nein, der Eibishter kommt auf Shabbos. Mehr wie ganze Woche. And this theory also says that it's Chalikim Lamal, right? So otherwise it doesn't say same thing, right?
Well, okay.
So now according to that theory, it has to be real. It has to really come Shabbos and nicht Zintig and nicht Montag, right?
Okay.
Sure. Now of course you could also say that he comes to every place in his time. You could say that. Shtazak Kasha.
Okay.
Right? But what you could say that.
Okay.
But then you don't stop saying Lamal and Azman. Lamal and Azman comes to theory. That's a really Lamatam and Azman theory.
Right? Another Mahalach. So it could be comes each place in a different time.
This goes on. There's no problem.
But that's the third way already. You're saying
no, that's another way.
No. What the problem? I think the problem that the people have with that way.
Also kasha then.
I think the problem. I think the problem that people have with that way is that makes it less real by itself.
Well, everybody's gonna tell you that's real. Everybody's gonna tell you it's
because
real Sunday here, and everybody's gonna the guy next door is gonna tell you.
No, it's not. It's not. Everyone understands that Sunday is a fake thing.
No, days begin.
Just a miskumme. If we'll put the date somewhere else, it'll be Monday and after minute. We just have to be able to coordinate. This was about language. It's not a real. There's no mystic of Sunday. There's no mystic of. There's no real Sunday. I mean it. According to Halacha, you can't do that. You see, that's
no. It's Halacha is just an application. It's just like.
What do you mean such a thing is a real Sunday? The first day of the cycle is a Sunday.
Yeah, but there's no mystic of Sunday. There's no Kedushas.
What's Sunday? When the sun goes, like whatever. Let's say there are no people. It would be Sunday. No.
Okay.
Because it's a name.
What of course it will be? Day
no.
one. So what, son? It's day
When we
one.
ball it, wait, when you start
No, there's no
balling
days.
on
It's a
the
continuous cycle.
I'm gonna put a ball. I'm gonna put a
Oh,
tree
Shabbos.
around
Then
this
once you have
day.
Shabbos, it breaks it. Otherwise, it would be
No,
day of
not
thousand.
Shabbos.
Day of thousand.
No, he says it's continuous cycle. It keeps on turning. Just a shout of how to call it.
The ball went around the table, so hit the sun went around the earth. I mean, who cares? I mean, that's day. Well, nothing happened.
Right.
The whole thing, it's a whole, it's a.
It's only people read. We need to be able to tell you what time it is.
Kedush actually says this. Not going to be Chashus. He says this.
I mean.
That's why there's really no. That's why it's so hard to start even talking about the whole thing.
Okay, I'm glad.
Whatever, because it's not a real. No, it's not real.
But the shal is wait, but this gets to the question. This really gets to the question where we have to get to. But the Lamashan Zen. So now, therefore, saying them, I don't know. The kid says, other is Lamal Nazman, and then the time is fake. Other is Lamal Nazman, and then you have the question of which one is real. Okay? Of course, you could say Teritzim, you could say as a Doichik, which is to add another split. But I tell you, the problem with doing that is that, firstly, most people, when they say that, they fall back into the Lamal Nazman theory, which is just a mix-up. Maltan himself, he says that he has this sort of mess going on, right? Because but there's a reason why people fall into that. Because it seems weird that you're basically saying that it's not. Where's the real Beis Hamikdash? Where's the real Kedusha? It sounds weird to say it. The reason why people go back to the Rambam when they start realizing this problem.
But they have a broader theory about that the Zman go faster in the Mala. They have a whole story.
Ich verstehe, aber das hilft nicht. Ich verstehe. Ich weiß, was du meinst. Ich weiß, aber das hilft nicht, keine Sache.
Why not?
Again, because that's a Lamal Nazman theory. It gets us back into this law.
They believe that the higher you go, the faster the Zman go, the more condensed Zmanim are. It's not like the Mal Zman. Yeah. He said there is Zman.
So, I mean,
it's seen as different.
If there is Zman, I mean,
no, faster.
Okay. Efter Samushel, das sagt. Nach recht. Okay, du verstehst, was der Plan, was du, es ist schwer zu treffen am mittelsten Weg, okay? You understand why it's hard? You understand why it's hard to find a middle way where you both have real Kedushas Zmanim and them being different in different times, in different places, and different achonis. It's hard. Maybe there's a way, but it's a problem.
Okay.
Therefore, again, the Chazal that never had this problem because they didn't think that Kedushas Zmanim were real, or even if they did think it was real, they definitely understood that we could miscite it however we want, and therefore Allah says get. Right? One of the digmus that the Chron bring, right? Einer was guy in the midbar, of course it's a suffix, right? Einer was guy in the midbar doesn't know it's Shabbos, so he makes some day Shabbos. What's the point of that? Yeah. And wenn then kommt the kalt mich in Gadishin. Keiner sich tracht von der Kasche affeller, right? So mayesh.
No, kind of. They did merge the situation, just like
Ich verstehe das weg.
like taking an apple for
I gotta have what to say about this thing with the midbar, but let's go back to things.
There seems to be a problem. Okay, that's.
I think that midbar is like really type of word Shabbos really always is. It's like this in the who said Shabbos ever was? It was after 6 days. It's not Shabbos.
I mean,
who says Shabbos is a
because we have to count it for the Sheish Bereishis, no?
What?
Doesn't it count from the first Shabbos out of the Medicine?
It comes out like that, but who said it's really like that?
That's a different shtick.
No, that's what I said. That's what they're talking about.
No, I had it right.
But wait, but that's a halacha. Then you're saying
the right is like 7 days. They say it's not the 5th. It doesn't say Yom HaShvi Shabbos. It always says Sheish Yom Tov.
I understand. But then you're back to saying that there's no Kedushas Shabbos. There's no time. There's not in Himmel. Nothing happens on the 7th every 7th day. Maybe after 7 days. That's a different. Okay, so then you're side it. So it doesn't study in my Chikira. It's different Chikira really. Okay. So what happens? I think that the Kizri invented datelines because of this problem. Okay, then is that that's why, and we'll tell me some of the Chazanish. I think that I'll explain you what I think about the Chazanish and all of this. Kim the Kizri. So why did the Kizri invent datelines? He invented it, right? Maybe he wasn't Kabbalah, but he was the one that we know it from. Okay, the Balamur quoted him and whatever. Now he invented it. Why did he invent it? Not for halachic reasons. Not because they got a challenge. He didn't have the problem that we have. Maybe there were some people there, or I don't know what they did. Right? Why did he invent it? Because he wrote Ma'amar Bayis, and Ma'amar Bayis says, it says that what? That God is not in the mind. It's not like Chosalov says, "Wie is God?" betzfir. Remember, the Chazal has a quote, beautiful quote that's a good summary of this whole shit. Al fayal betzfir. When you think about him, or when you look at him, whatever, misboinen. That's where he is. Because he's looking, wie is er? No, wie is er? And it's Yisrael, right? Statt in Pusik. And Dafke Badiden, and Dafke, and the Richtige Tzad. But it's Yisrael. That's one of his main things. But there's all these three parts, right? He's in right time, right place, right people. That's where he is, right? And then he goes through. Ta'arich is good, right? And he mamish, everyone knows that this is like Chazal. He's madgish a little more than Navia being in Yisrael. Gemura thinks that at least before Shnivchet Yisrael, you see this is another example of how you see that Chazal don't think of things as being Chak V'Le'av and the Teva, right? There's this whole Sigya, Vizak and Navi and Chitzluretz. Hayotzluni from that Sigya, right, is that there is Navi and Chitzluretz. We'll just find the excuse why. It's not a real thing. Every second Navi was a Chitzluretz. If you can say, it was before, it was after, it was the Chitzluretz is a ganze Shah, it's a Kedushas Zman, maybe after the Charbon it could back be, maybe Teritza, maybe if you start in Yisrael you could go on Chitzluretz, right? The Gemara Trech Dachkim, right? I have a very, this is a the on how do you learn all these sigis, right? The Rambam Lamushal thinks that we don't take a kimta seriously, right? The data was in Zalban is that there is Nevi and Chitzluretz, right? This is Kilam and Moida, right? Then there's a saying that says there's no Nevi and Yisrael, but every Yitzchok we have a different excuse, right? Now does that mean that now we have to make a whole new theory of Nevi, including all these excuses? What it means is that maybe tomorrow, you know what, maybe if you'll be in a snab in Lakewood, you'll have another teretz. After noch do noch ein teretz, then we're past, man, then we're just with all the existing ones. There might be another one. Right? In other words, this klal is a schwache klal. It's not so real. Okay. The Gemara definitely says before Shnifchet Yisrael, sicher make kein Zan Nevi'enches. The Kizdi comes and he takes this very seriously, right? So there's no Nevi'enches there's ever. No real such a thing. Either were, they were about it Yisrael at least. This is what he says. No teretz. No teretz. The Gemara doesn't say this teretz. There's a new teretz. Every Novi in the world was at least about it Yisrael. So the Bechina said, Epis, right? Nai teretz. And Bariches Gudel, Nishdu Gunisht nor in Yisrael, right? And then he says, then he has a kasha, there's really more going on. He says, do you see him? It gets it. Barich is a lot of different kashas on this Torah, and if I all the kashas, I'd say mention nicht jeder in Yisrael is good. Yeah, you have to have also the right person and so on. Okay, and then he asks the question. It says beferish, by the way, Vayriim l'shem Hashem be'eretz michedet v'zmanim kviyim lo shiskem alav lo shnukim choch p'sakechovim. So again, the astrologers are right in principle, but they have the wrong ideas. L'shdu azach el masha nikre me'adei Hashem im taharis v'avodas v'dur mas mishulim dem lechs Hashem avodas Hashem and me'adei Hashem. That's why to the kizri me'adim a very important part of avodas Hashem, because avodas Hashem it can't be done in the wrong time. There is time for things, and we are the me'adei Hashem. Now he gets to his interesting chiddush. Then when he says, you see that v'da. He's sort of asking a question. Almost says beferish the question. What do you mean? The Shabbos is in Chitzluretz. He's here making it Yisrael the most important yesod of everything. There's taka time and there's taka people, but even those people, when they're in Chitzluretz, it doesn't work. Even those people when they're not in, even the time if that's Chitzluretz, it doesn't work. But that's not true, obviously, right? Because Shabbos is a universal thing. Now, Me'adam, you could still kvetch maybe the Ma'ikah Me'adam is a lila regel, Ma'afgan Yisrael. But how does it work with Shabbos? So the Kizrin, and let me tell you. Yeah. The Ferish, V'da, ki Shabbos Hashem me'adei Hashem, omnem em tlim benachlas Hashem. Omar HaKizri, he meint chiles kvesayim misin?
Me what?
What do you mean the Shabbos is Yisrael? Shabbos in China. That's where the day starts, right?
Misin, is it?
Yeah. V'shtichles HaMizrach. What are you saying that Shabbos is Yisrael? He says no, because I have this Oshtikel Torah, but Sheshuas, I don't think it's weinig. And the Kimto is that when the Shabbos starts, that's when the first Shabbos started in Eretz Yisrael, and Adi Emazeh, that's the halacha, that Shabbos is totally in Eretz Yisrael. Right? So the Kimto is that the whole Shtikel Torah of Noel Korah Chatzas, this whole thing is what? To say that the real Shabbos is only Eretz Yisrael. Now, why do we have Shabbos? Because it's really Shabbos. In other words, because that day of Shabbos moves. It's Shabbos for 18 hours, right? It's Shabbos for 36 hours, really, right? That's really the Kizri's idea, right? So now let's just make very clear what the Kizri shit is and what Andre mentioned. Now maybe we can think about the halach of the Dateline also, right? The Kizri shit is that Shabbos means the seventh day since Sharish Nabarashis, and we're the seventh day. We're the Yisrael one, but it doesn't literally, and therefore Ikra Shabbos is in Eretz Yisrael, right? What happens when you live a little further? He says beferish. He says beferish that it's a spashtis a Shabbos, Hashem Shvi al Poshut b'chol HaYishiv. So the fact that it's Shabbos now in America, whenever that time is, because we got that, it's still Shabbos a little late. The day that was Shabbos Chal Eretz Yisrael, it comes to us a little later. Shabbos Rik Tzcha B'Israel, and it comes to us. But really, it started in Eretz Yisrael. So Kim Tos Lefidikus, and it says it more or less, he doesn't say it openly in this shtickle, but it's Kim Tos, if you really want to experience Shabbos, you have to be in Eretz Yisrael.
What do you mean it comes late? What does that mean?
Because a day, to him there's a day. A day is longer than 24 hours, basically, according to the Kizi. Right? Of course, there's a cycle, so it doesn't turn out. But if you look in general, you'll see that a day is longer than 24 hours. But it's not infinitely long. It's not just undifferentiated. There's real days. And days start from Tchilas HaMizrach, 6 hours before Eretz Yisrael, which is really when the sun starts in Eretz Yisrael. And then it turns around, and that's when the day finishes. A day is not like the Gemara in Tachas Kol Chevech. That a day is a little bigger than the one area. But it's that day. Right? And what we get Shabbos later, the people that are later from Eretz Yisrael, they're just getting Shirayim.
Yeah, when it starts from one part of the line until it hits the other side.
Yeah, that's how you understand it. That's why is the Dateline like this? Because the world was created, the Udam Edition like Eretz Yisrael, and that's when he saw the beginning of the day. That's when it's Eretz Yisrael, right?
So why is it 6 hours before?
That's a big question. That's the middle. That's 6 hours. That's where you get into the whole chazanish with it. That's because he's really not clear about it.
Why it starts earlier? No, I think that he has a misunderstanding on this, right? You think it's a problem? No, because he thinks that means that it started earlier. I'm not sure.
So then it's not like the rule, Shine. So no, because it's Nigra. This is the whole complication. This is the whole complication.
Okay, actually,
this Chazanish has his mahalach in it, and this is the whole thing. This is more than in the Kuzur, it's very not clear. Those 6 hours. Those 6 hours is very not clear.
The 6 hours before it is true.
Yeah, that's very not clear.
Okay, but he seems to look at it that when you see the day here, it must have started a little earlier.
Something like that.
That's how he looks at it. Because you say. So the problem is the why. Why don't we say that when the sun comes up? No, because he looks at it that it's Emtzah Yeshiv. So therefore, Samach says so. The sun doesn't start because he looks at a day as a very real thing. They start. The sun is what makes the day. It starts. It makes sense. The sun doesn't start at Yisrael. Obviously, nobody thinks that Yisrael is B'Tchilas HaYishiv. Yisrael is Emtzah Yishiv. And therefore, when did the sun start? Tchilas HaYishiv in China, 6 hours before it Yisrael. Yes, but it's Yisrael what makes that Shabbos. The Yisrael is not the first Shabbos. He doesn't need that Yisrael to be the first Shabbos. He needs that Yisrael to be the real Shabbos. In other words, how did we decide that today is Shabbos and not Sunday? Because when it's Yisrael, that's the Shabbos. And now, if you're living at Yisrael, of course you know that the day started a few hours before it came to you. And the day moves. The day moves. We move inside the day. The day moves around the world. The day, literally, the day, Yom HaShabbos, Hayab Tzchon and Sin, Sefu Utarim, basically Tzirik Tzin, and then it's Sunday, right? But who is the Udam? He is the Platz that decides when it's Shabbos.
Why is there a Shabbos altogether?
No, what's decides which is the real Shabbos? He's not really looking for somewhere to start it. He's looking for somewhere to be real. I think that's really what's going on. He's looking for Shabbos to be real only in Eretz Yisrael.
Why do you see that it's more real in Eretz Yisrael than in any other place now?
Because that's what Udam Edition gemeint. No, the Kedusha is all over.
In what sense is Shabbos Chal in Eretz Yisrael first or anything?
Not first. It's not first. Obviously, it's not first.
Whatever. What do you see in Eretz Yisrael anything special about Shabbos?
Because Udam Edition started in Eretz Yisrael, and that when his
He kratzt sich so Shabbos. What do you see anything special about Yisrael? The Kedushas Shabbos, the Kedushas Shabbos. What do you see anything?
Because the day that it comes to Yisrael, that's when it's Shabbos. Imagine that would be not at Yisrael. Then it would be 6 hours from there. Lot of put the kasha for 6 hours. For 6 hours is the way you understand.
You think it would be 6 hours before sin?
What? If the world would have lived in sin, that would exactly, of course.
6 hours before. Because that's some say that shot because you still see the sun then. Maybe
because we understand that there's 6 hours. He somehow had this understanding that the sun starts 6 hours before where you come and it comes to you. But
Yeah,
the real one is not Yisrael.
Well, yeah,
The only real one is Yisrael. No, so going back, the Kisri is really a metaphysical principle, not a halacha. The Kisri is
Right.
let's get.
That's where there's a Shabbos.
That's not where it starts, right? That's where the real Shabbos is. That's where the day is. I got the bissel vat. Of course, the day fuhrt a bissel. The day fuhrt a bissel. It start. Of course, the day starts. Because that's where Kedushas Shabbos.
The
No,
world is. That's everything.
because that's where Kedushas Shalom. Because that's the only place where God is.
That's what I'm saying. So why is it Kedushas all over? That's the only place Kedushas
It moves a little. Because that day, because Shabbos is a chalas. It's like nachamol. It's like if you, the day was niskandish by being by Yisrael. Right now, the fact that we have to do it, we know it's still in the world. We don't know Shabbos either. That's basically what it's trying to get at, right? Or if it's still will be somewhere, the 8th Kodesh will be somewhere else. Shabbos will be a different day. That really is. That's what he wants. That's all the kids he wants. He's not here for halacha. So he doesn't care about halacha. He cares about Shabbos being real. Now, two steps. Really, this is really the first step. Firstly, Shabbos is real, like all me'adim. Nicht. Like he's saying, if it would be a different day, no, totally fake. It would be a different day. It has to be. Forget about Maaseh B'rayis. It has to be the day where the Kedushas Shabbos comes. So as Kedushas Shabbos, and it comes in a certain time. Now, where does it come? In a certain place also, right? Not only because time and place are the same thing, really, right? It comes in a certain place and a certain time. It doesn't. You can't just have it whenever you want. It comes to Israel, of course. Look, there was a guy that's so fort, it's a bisschen weit as the rest of the world, like Shirayim. But the real, if you want to really have Shabbos, you have to go to Israel. In a certain sense, at least, right? But Kamash Malan Rafil Shabbos. Rafil Shabbos was the Choyde Shaychas at Yisrael. No, because Shabbos is only at Yisrael, right? So the Kizri. So now let's get back to our question that the Chleinim are asking, right? The Kizri doesn't have the question and both knows the answer to it, right? You ask the Kizri when is Shabbos? Is the Shabbos in America? Shabbos not Yisrael. But the Shabbos for Yisrael furtarim a bissel. So he both has, in other words, he doesn't need to figure out a Lowy Zman to get theory because he looks at it. Look at the sun. The sun is the day. He moves around. Of course, days are things that move. Days are things that take more than a day to happen, right? This is kasha. Every day takes more than a day to happen because a day is a real thing, and it takes 36 hours for a day to happen, or from when the first.
So, but doesn't really think about Zman in Himmel. The Zman is here.
Vergess von der Himmel.
Yeah, right.
No, this is the man von Himmel. What do you mean? Der Eibischte kommt da up and there is man, and there is man fuhrt da in der Welt.
Right.
Kommt echt nicht Yisrael. That's what makes it this man, and then it fools a bisschen. Beside it,
right? It doesn't have this whole problem with the später they can happen. It doesn't have the Himmel. The Himmel is just so.
No, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the teretz. No, I don't think that's the problem. No, I'll tell you better one. There's a better pshat for us. No, even better than that. What he doesn't have, the reason he doesn't have the later people's question is because he is looking at it. I could be it isn't Himmel. All this is in Himmel, but in Himmel is just 36 hours of Shabbos in Himmel ochet. Because a day is longer than a day. Just like everyone looks, and every astronomer knows that a day is longer than a day. Of course, astronomers today would tell you there's no such a thing as days, but to him there is such a thing as days. You have to think. Let me think about this. Is why I think there's a fourth mahalach, which is the Kizri's mahalach. I'm about 9. I saw it, but I don't remember. I actually did see, but I didn't see that he says. I didn't see him saying anything. I'm glad the other kicked out the hammer. I didn't understand. I don't remember that he says anything. I think what I think. That's why this is a fourth way, which is actually, if you want to have the Kizri's way, this is the way you should go. You shouldn't make all these weird samshtels that the later Achranim made. Well, you should say something like this, and it's so simple that it's clear, and the Baltanya people like that didn't realize it. The Kizri explicitly compares this to astrology, right? Explicitly. The Mama Gimli is the Loic astrology, but what he means to say, like he says, is the astrologers didn't think the wrong things, but there is astrology. Now, let's ask the astrologers this question, right? Astrologers look, when the Masel Ma'adim kimt, turns out you're going to be a bad. Let's ask them this question. So, when is the Masel Ma'adim and Chitzlos, the Masel Ma'adim, like the Moiled, right? We make some people are machas the Moiled from Chomer Yerushalayim, right? Welchem Moiled is mach the Masel from the Mensch. This is a stupid question, right? Obviously, the Moiled from where you are, which is when the real Moiled came to you, right? It's a circle. Of course, the real Kedushas, the Mazel that's Mashpia is not in the Olam Hazeh, it's not subjective, it's very real. It's over there in the Stern, the Galgal Stern, that's where the Stern is. But that Galgal itself moves around. Where you move, or it moves, what's the chilik? So it moved around, and whenever you're by that Galgal, that's what we're talking about, right? And since we're telling, see, of course, not Aleirich has to the long, Aleirich HaKabul of Sechel, we're telling to the same thing. Of course, Shabbos moves around. The Shabbos, we move around it, or it moves around us, and that's when the real Shabbos is. Of course, the real Chalas, like he says, is with Viet Yisrael. What?
That's the Irish shows.
What? In 36 hours. For 36 hours. But the Irish Shvi says, he's not worried about that. It moves around.
36,000.
It moves around. It moves around because he's Shoivus Netz Yisrael for 12. He's Shoivus Netz Yisrael for 24 hours. Then he's Shoivus in the next for 24 hours.
He comes down.
Yeah, of course, he comes. Shoivus, whatever Shoivus means. The Irish Kind Netz Yisrael then noch dem Schreiben der Welt. Also wie das in. Why is this so complicated?
Aber der Mal kommt nicht darauf du.
Sicher kommt das darauf du. Das sind schon du. Wenn ist der echte Zintig? Es ist echte Zintig. What kind of question is it even? There's no question, Bechlau. The echte Zintig. Es ist echt. And of course, it's more echt Netz Yisrael because that's Kevai which day it is. But it's the real same Eibish. Let's say Netz Yisrael is 2 datelines, right? Theoretically there is. It's some difference. It's also.
I'm just saying, yes, Lamal is.
No, there's no Yetz Lamal.
Lamal, Motzah Shabbos and Netz Yisrael.
No, it's not.
Is Shabbos?
Just like in the Shtin, Yetz Lamala, it's not. There's a Mazel Madim. There's always a Shabbos in that sense. There's always a Mazel. There's always a Mazel Madim, but there's nicht auf der Welt jetzt. The Eibishter, let's talk about the language. The Eibishter bleibt in Himmel. The Eibishter not the dying. But I came that up. Then came that up. Also wie der Stern. I got the food out in the Welt. How's the Santa Claus? You ever saw Google Santa Claus tracker? They have the same cash. That's all correct. Santa Claus. Get from Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So Santa Claus. Come on, let's learn. Santa Claus, which was probably invented by some Jewish advertising agency.
It did, yeah. Scary guy.
Actually, yeah, Santa Claus. So Google what he do with a Santa Claus tracker. I'm at the
They kept the gallon in the babies.
Supposedly Santa Claus wohnt in the North Pole, right? Wenn es wird kratzt, mich damals kommt er, ja?
Ja, North Pole.
Ja, also egal, das ist in der Messiah. Now, hier sitzt er nach, wenn kommt er, wie kommt er? Kommt er, einmal, er sitzt er Pelz und er dreht around der Fjake dort, und er kommt sich fuhren mit seinen Menschen, und wenn fuhrt er, kommt er Australia, because that's where Christmas comes first. I think Google has every year Christmas, you can see where's Santa now. Jetzt in Australia, das jetzt. Später kommt er, jede Bachzos kommt er, ja, jede Stutt kommt er. Why is this even a question? It's so simple. Now the text, of course, like you're saying, that for some reason people forget this astrological way of thinking. Suddenly they're like this in Himmel. The Himmel is not a static thing. The Himmel, just like the Himmel, forget maybe Lamalam astrology, there's another Olam, noch an Galgal, was is wieder verkehrnisch.
Das ist Astrology, sei in der Regel mit Kabudum gegen so, das sei jetzt mamisch
Beside, ich kann I don't care about that. I'm asking with that, of course, but that still has the same. I'm just you borrowing the structure. I'm just borrowing the structure. You could see that it's not a kasha. The Stern is emes. The Stern is emes.
The day is here.
The day moves around. Days moves around. Days move around. Spheres that see. Let's move around also. Through whichever cylinder they go through. That's was the kasha. The day moves around, and in other words, we could say me move through it. In other words, you could say it's. Oh, of course, that's why you could say it would be true to say in this astrological structure language. It would be true to say that the day is. Oh, the Shabbos exists always, right? B'chinas Shabbos exists allemol, but the kim tzins demels. And it's not l'mal min hazman. It's l'mata min hazman. Everyone agrees that the planets are l'mata min hazman. But it's still, there's a cycle. This is a kim. The kasha is halb gestorben. The Eibish the kim. Yeah, fuhrt in the Welt. What does it exactly mean? Whatever it means.
Because about time, the Meister held of this mufshetik thing. He didn't.
If it's mufshet, then the kasha halb gestorben. Again, he's just confused.
I know, but yeah.
This is one of my good examples for the Achronim being totally confused. Okay, so lass mich dabei muss sagen, ja. So this kein Kolumn ending with the dateline. Du verstehst, dass bei der Kizi jetzt schon der Kasha, because it's at least analogous to astrology, if not astrology mamish. Safi Yetzirah, by the way, which is one of the oldest Kabbalist forum, let's say. And he talks about, it doesn't say Kedushas Zman, but he has an astrological system, or maybe it's Lamalm astrology, but he's the Chodesh there, right? Nobody asked that, and maybe it connected Kedushas Zman. He doesn't say it openly, but the Mefarshim, Safi Yetzirah, tried to connect it, right? Yeah, the Safi Yetzirah has a structure of Olim Shon Nefesh, and Vecha Asa Shodet Vecha Chodesh, right? Safi Yetzirah, I'm just saying, the astrologic, if you understand, and everyone, by the way, the Mekabbalim are also moed with astrology, just say there's Olam Asiyah beside it. But I'm just using the way of astrology working and to understand that the kasha doesn't begin. It's both true and we means for not durch that's so the either the it's like who is who. It's going through the cycle. And the same thing with all materials that lamal with avsachilek. And I'm showing you the Safi Yetzirah, which is probably, if you want a real source for Zmanim having a real meaning, it has to be Safi Yetzirah. and he has every chodesh different and every day of the week and so on, right? Different mazulas, different oisias from the Aleph Bayes and the Azivate. And probably this is meant to explain also Kedushas Shabbos, like Kedushas Sameadim, the Mefarshim tell it already. And if you add the Sefer Yitzir, so when is the end of the Shabbos, you'll say, when it comes to you. Just like astrologers would say. Just the Achrom that they somehow forgot, that them it's like, there's a static Himmel, and the Ven is, like I'm saying, it's just very, very confusing. I don't understand why it's B'chlal Akasha. This seems to be the correct teretz if you want to have the Kizri's way. This seems to be the truth. Now, Chadaf ending with the Alucha from the Dateline, it seems to me also that, therefore, it seems to me also that according to the Rambam we don't need a Dateline, and also not according to Chazal. We can just decide whatever we want. What? When fence is empty, doesn't make a difference. There's no real Shabbos anyway. So we'll set. No, what I'm trying to say is that Lo Rambam the Chaznish is mad. Being mad doesn't make sense. Then, was time without decide. Who'll decide? Was 10 dimensions in space when machen da Shabbos and man achieving all Israel for this. No, that's not teretz according to the Rambam shit.
Kasha hell like this.
Yeah, tell her what.
I just wanna tell you according to people for sure hold like this, but I want to say I'm full a little track and this is shape. We could No, it's not. This is literally
saying it is the Rishonim.
This is the Kizri's whole reason for having a Dateline is because of his machshava. This word was not it was because he thinks that Shabbos is real, and most other Rishonim don't agree.
He says the Rishonim all like the Kizri. That's why.
Können wir das nicht stemmen, so sicher was Dinge, aber viele Undes.
Nobody's
Of course, that just the whole point of the Chaznish is that they're not mechilik only in Prat and the Gemur and they're not mechilik on the Eitzmi Yisod. But it's pink verkehrt. The Eitzmi Yisod is only the Fi Shit is a Kizli, which is very eccentric. Most of the Shem don't hold this. Nein, ich rede nicht the astrology Shit. Ich weiß, was ich so. Ein Minute, lass mal. Ein Minute, lass mal dich verstehen.
He took ein Heilig, so a Stück was muss advance, so he said that's why he wasn't the Ganze.
No, the advance. I can tell you about the advance. The advance, the Akasha says this already, like me. The advance was, the Rav is, what do you mean? I can't say it, but I guess from the Sieg von der, ich will jetzt noch reisig in der Machshove. Ich will jetzt noch reisig in der Machshove. Ein Minute. Bald time saying. So let's, maybe it's doing them. I don't know enough information. About that. I'm just reckoning the Cheshbon of the Sieg, also kommt mich aus. So kommt aus. Of course, if you kids this shit, there needs to be a Dateline. Right? Because Shabbos is real. Right. You have to figure out which is the real one. Right. Come to the Rambam shit, doesn't make sense, the Kasha. Whatever. If the Lamaster will make it, whatever. So by the Shem's time, this question wasn't Lamaster, so they were just talking theoretical anyways. Right. Either Pshat Nesigi or like the Kizri who was trying to make an idea.
Who would do it?
Whoever. Maybe, actually in reality, whatever the guy says that it's Sunday. That it's Saturday. That's in reality. We don't need, why do you have to even a Bezdin? Just, they come so gedenken, that I was like, the Welt mit sechs Tag, and I chillik weg tog. According to the Rambam, let's think about it. The whole Wasserbrach is the Chamushel, right? By the way, so when does Shabbos start? Whatever, I don't know when. Warum Avini, what the Melishim weiß nicht. Tracht hängen then. When did they decide it? What was the Minig Oilam?
No. How's any halacha work? We have certain food is how is it with seeds today? That's the thing.
But
how's any halacha work?
But that's the key for the question. But that's key for the.
We could say this. We could say all kinds of things. Now,
but that's key for the question. But that's key for the question. What's the proper way to approach it? Does there need to be a real Sunday? Everyone agrees Shabbos is Saturday. I was just telling you, Saturday. Now, how does Saturday get decided? Why is that important? Lav dafka, that it could be that's not a minute. Of course, you have to decide. No.
Decide that the Shabbos starts in America.
You could. You definitely could.
But we don't do it.
I mean, this too. No, I'm not masking. I'm not masking. Calling the call. But I will nicht daran quetschen. I will nicht daran fallen da Luche durch. Ich will nur reden von der Gude. Ja. Macht nicht wie aus der Luche. Nicht in der Shit. Only aus der Gude. Let's try to understand. No. Let's try to understand. Let's try to understand where the Chaznish is going. I think the Chaznish is coming from somewhere, but from a Aguda, not from a Halacha. Okay? And the Rambam's way of thinking, Lot was a Gimp Michos, Shabbos should be whenever. And it's fixed to halacha lemasa. How am I going to decide it? I'm not worried about that. It doesn't matter. The fact is, let's say maybe the minhag was decided by a stupid reason. I don't care. There's nothing. There's no avla in having Shabbos on Sunday. The Chazonish's whole problem comes from that there's an avla to have Shabbos on Sunday because the Chazonish is a das yuchad. Drauf andere Rabunim sagen anders. Kommt ein Schrei, steht der Scheunem. Who cares? It's noch Stein. Dann befiehlt sich nicht. Gange warten. That's what I'm worried. I'm not asking. You're asking a different question. Lamas, how are we going to decide? That's a different question. But to the Chazonish, this way of deciding is real, in a very real way, in a certain real way at least.
No,
it's real.
Chazonish doesn't care about all this Aguda thing.
Of course he does. Of course he cares about it. By Moshe Rabbeinu Fasinai, the Eibush is good. The Togs don't machen. Yeah, but the bunch. Okay, but I'm not getting into this Fasinai thing. But the Eibush is okay. The Zibet Togs don't machen Shabbos. It's when it's Zibet Tog. Who cares? Whenever you think it's Zibet Tog. Who says that he cares? He's assuming that he cares about everything. Who says? I don't think he doesn't even care. He doesn't even care when is the Emes Digre Shuna.
That's one shit.
No, I'm not even saying that. But you're asking about the second step. You're asking about the second. I mean, the halt about the second step. That's like
figure out what's the seventh day.
That's exactly. I want to know: is there such a thing as the seventh day? Is there really such a thing that we have to be mechaven? The Chazonish's whole thing is that we have to be mechaven to the Emes the Gezibet Tog. Otherwise, you're having Shabbos on Sunday.
I think
now, I'm in it. Now the Shabbos is.
In the halachic sense, yeah. I mean,
I don't think.
Right.
No, I don't know about. I don't know who says there's such a thing as the real Zibet Tog. The real.
It doesn't have to be, but
there's no such a thing.
Halacha works.
Halacha doesn't know. Halacha doesn't know. Who said halacha works like this? How give a Shabbos?
No, just like that.
Ich weiß es halt also. Ich bin so ganz sicher.
Or else we could just make up anything.
By the way, we definitely do make up anything.
Okay, fine. I'm just saying, but
is a stack. No, but this.
Trying to decide an objective.
They're actually not. They're actually not. By the way, they're not. They're not. It's not true. Couldn't be called. Okay, you can't just sit down in the details because this is get the call to the killer. Rishonim was just by the way, Rishonim was just random people that lived a few hundred years ago. They're not like they don't even pretend to say that they're Makawal from Moshe Rabbeinu or anything. A lot of them even say this. No, you can't go around saying this should have shown him. And okay, this is not Hashmis. Let's get back to where we are. The reason why the reason
I actually think Zalman Taka didn't like this.
Okay.
He didn't.
Let's get back there. Es ist sicher gewesen einer was halt das für mich. Warte mal dann wart. Es ist sicher gewesen einer was halt by the way the advance that he thinks talks about the dateline really he's talking about this Shabbos, not about the dateline. Of course the advance didn't have the halacha shal. It was only about this kasha that we're talking about. So the advance I don't know which the years. This is the same tkifa that people are worried about this question. I mean
says over there that says Rav Rishonim says that
Okay, we're getting into Stampolitik. Then the kid is the reason why this idea of a Dateline was invented was because the Rebbe Yid alive he imagined that there's such a thing as a real Kedushas Shabbos. Okay? Going to the Rambam, hype dich schon der Schale. Okay?
You still have to decide if
Ich will ask that we still have to decide, but it's not with nobody then there's nobody living in Japan, nobody had to decide. We didn't have to decide. The only reason why people even started talking about this was because they had a theoretical question, which is when is the real Shabbos? And the kids wanted very much the real Shabbos to be in Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
That's why we even know about this thing. Okay? Now, therefore, if you think that there's such a thing as the real Shabbos is when you shoyves, right? Just like I was saying, according to the Rambam, of course, has to be a mushal. Even according to the Ramban, it's probably a mushal. And therefore, when it's the real Shabbos is whoever started, maybe Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that decided which day should be Shabbos. I don't even know if it was Udam Arishan or something. Maybe there was. It could be that.
I thought of this one.
It could be it was. It could be that it was Mekibel that there was a seventh day. That's the Mizrah Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, no, that because there's sicher nicht because there's definitely cultures where they don't have these 7 days. But kein Sharan and them. The fakir, but it's true that in our culture, I mean, to say wherever we come from was probably before the Torah, the idea of a 7-day week. But nicht literally in ganz Kadra, but beside probably. Again, ich weiß. Okay, Chakim. That was before Moshe Rabbeinu. Nicht noch Moshe Rabbeinu. Noch einmal, the Torah event, Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, probably I don't know if he already know when Shabbos was. But I'm just saying, it could have been one person that started it. So now, of course, this whole thing stems with because this idea that everything is motivation is a real thing.
I thought that.
If Shaish Mavrash is a mushal, then obviously this doesn't make sense. Also, the Moilud Barat, it's also a cheshm. The Moilud is rechnen from Kili Moilud Toy, whatever. All of these things have to be just the halachic Ashuris is not okay.
Let's learn this mufshatig thing that each day was like a day.
And Chanami, but then how does it connect to the real days? Somehow it connects. Doesn't matter. Okay. Therefore, the feeling now shit. It's not a cash. He asked me how taka we can decide. It's a good child. Maybe there's a gemur. Maybe we'll even go with this gemur because I'm shouting with English. Maybe that's a good way to decide. I'm not saying that. Even according to the Rambam, you're right that we have to decide. Maybe a good way to decide is to go whatever the Sadiq and the gemur is. We should go with that. The idea, but it's not. But if someone decided wrong, but it's not. No, I'm asking. But the case is true. But the only different nafkmin is that you can't decide wrong. And maybe that's the correct. If you decided wrong, is that's even and according to Chazal's way of atma then for sure like this, right? Atma shagim is not because it's of Shabbos, not of call it the killer, right? If we decide, then the takabik types that come in Demels in China, right?
But yeah,
only
okay.
Exactly. So
I wasn't either concerned about it. He didn't either hold that there's a problem with the Kedushas Zman. He cared about the law.
But this, I mean it. Ich darf umgehen zu this. Wait, it's not true. He just pretended. I mean it. Ich darf da umgehen zu this. Darf doch sagen. So, who says? Who says they kept Shabbos? Who says this? Are you saying that it's a medrash? Ich verstehe. I agree. If you ask me, I would assume that everyone knew when Shabbos was, but ich weiß. But I'm just saying. So no, you're right. I have to say this.
The man showed them Shabbos for sure.
Noch einmal, ich verstehe. For sure, by Mishra Bein it's not already Shabbos, and probably before also. I don't think he mamish made it up. I'm just saying it's not Sharish Me'Beresh if it's a mush.
We have a thing to go.
So in Chanami, the Sambatien, we can also check the Sambatien in China when it's stopped. All the Chadish wouldn't like this idea, but we can. Lo the Kizri can, and the Kizri uses these things as proof.
No, dry it up already.
It's passed out in China, so it's about to
Shine. It's doing a bunch of Sambatians, whatever. Okay. Actually, yeah. Actually, and Chanami, this has to have to get the thing of halacha. Of course, there's really two. Again, this is the Achronim having a mishmash of two ways. The same three ways is thinking about halacha, not only about again the same thing, right? You could have the Chazal way where the Rambam's way where halacha is just whatever we decided to be in Himmel geshet gunish, right? There's no halacha in Himmel. Maybe in the sense of the truth, but most of halacha is not really about truth. It's only about how does he call it for summers, and basically it's whatever we decided to be. Right? That's the Rambam. For summers, yeah, of course, because the Rambam, the story of of course, because truth is only what's mechrech logically to be true. In other words, tamit is much his ikram. That's why the Rambam says that halacha is not as important as ikram, because this is true, and this is just arbitrary in a certain sense. Of course, there's better and worse ways. He does think that it's tzadikim. It's the most correct way of acting, but it's still not true, right? So that's what the Torah meaning true means b'chnal for him. Okay, no, to Torah.
How
Ganze Taran.
What's the word in English? How would you say the word in English?
Ich weiß nicht.
Consensus.
Yeah, socially constructed things. Yeah, I think the exact translation is. Yeah, exactly. Socially acceptable, accepted things.
English.
Okay. No, you have to say it in the right way.
Socially accepted things. No, and therefore, halacha, since halacha is only about this, of course, there's correct ways, but it's exactly to what extent is a correct questions like this for sure he would say, and he says, and there were these ways it's not related to the truth, it's related to what people think. Chaznish, of course, is very mechilik in this, and a very famous. The Chachamim, the Chrois Chachamim, that's what makes the halacha. That's the only real halacha that exists. What the Chacham said, the Bezna Gudel. The Rambam is the one that made the Bezna Gudel so important for halacha. He's the one that invented this. Of course, that should be the Bezna Gudel. Chamaskim, second order of should, right? It can't be Torah's Knech B'Yudah and Azevate, but the Bezna Gudel is not word. Again, the Bezna Gudel can't make a mistake by definition. That's the point, right? There is no metaphysical halacha which they have to find out. Of course, lefi another person being machriya. That's all it is at the end of the day. Of course, it could be a mistake because the Torah steht in Pusik, they can the Mishnah and so on. But if they make Rosh Chodesh the wrong day, then that's the day of Rosh Chodesh. They didn't make a mistake. It's not possible to make a mistake. Okay.
Why do you think Chazon is Chodesh on this?
Because Chazon very famously says that the reason why, and it's Chodesh kind of put in the Vasma, which goes the rounds way, but the reason why we're Makabel Divrei Tanuim and Rishonim is not because the Zachrua, like a Rav kind of thing, it's because that's the truth. He very much wants the halacha to be the truth. Okay. Now, there's the. Let me just look at the same three. I think.
Because of them to not be here, he says,
I'm in it.
all the sun in one day, all the oldest in the sheet.
I'm in it.
Who said he means that same truth?
Du hast zweite Weg, wer?
When he says truth, he means the Rambam's truth.
Of course, he knows that there's a problem with this.
It's more chachmadik, I think.
No, but what is wrong? Why is he not happy with this true description of events, which is that we accept most of what it says in the Mishnah just because they're the Mishnah, not because they know the truth. The truth in Torah, that's not the truth of the Torah. Luzana Zoy, the same thing. You also don't have to go with the truth of the Torah. According to the Rambam, according to the Samchus way of understanding things. The Rambam Beferish says in Hilchos Treifus, for example, that the Hilchos Treifus might be wrong, and I don't care, right? People don't realize that's what he says, but that's what he says, right? There's machlok the loike andere Rishonim. The loike Gemura is attached around the Gemura, right? What does the Rambam say? Hilchos Treifus is a real thing. The Torah says, the Chacham say at least in Sadrai, right? That any behemoth that's in danger, that's not in danger, the guy starben is to understand, right? Now the Chacham went and they made a list of 70 Treifus based on their knowledge of Dr. I. Okay. He doesn't say it was Messina or anything like that. Right? Now, kommt der handige doctor and he says, das ist richtig. Not the doctor, the reality, forget about the doctor, right? So let's say we found out that they made some mistakes. Both Lechimra and the killer, right? Some of the things that they said were mistaken are not mistaken. Some of the things they said were not mistaken or they didn't count are mistaken. What do we do? Right. It's a serious question. Nobody knows the answer to this question before the Rambam comes and answers it. Stua Gemura, was man keine Schmutz an all Treifes, but that Gemura Pashtus just means that it's not mistaken. So, Kim the Rambam, he says, Al Pia Torah Sheri, Chazelush na Rambam. He doesn't say, Chazal always right, like the Rashba says, when was asked the same question, or a similar question. He doesn't say Chazal always right, because he knows that they were not always right. He just says the Torah doesn't care about the truth. He says, every doctor in the world says this Bahem will die in 5 hours. If it's not in the list of Treifes, he says, if it's Skunas Tafushes, then Skunas Tafushes, that halucha, that we can't use this trick on Cholesh because he's going to die. But as long as you're not going to die from eating it, Gendikt, I don't care. There's a very clear that shows that he totally doesn't care even about the truth of the Torah. He only cares about the Chum said. And theoretically, if Bez Nagudel tomorrow will come and say that there's more Treifes, and meanwhile, we have this Bez Nagudel. Yeah. Who are you calling me? Can try. Ich darf dich ending at some point auch. That's one shit. Now, then there's another shit that says, Fakete shit, this is the opposite of the Kizri shit. The Kizri literally thinks about Alucha like this. He talks about Alucha very openly and later in Mamurim. And the Kizri openly holds that Alucha really, the only real thing that can make Alucha is Neviah. You know the Kizri, right? Totally opposite, radically the opposite of the Rambam. Because he thinks that the halachas we take seriously are the ones that Nevi'im said, or Mekilum Nevi'im, and so on. And everything else is just daf nachriz and dafman. But real halacha they have to take seriously. Only if it was a Novi, or Ke'en Novi, Hadin Nevi'ah, and so on. He's cholik totally on the Rambam that says that Nevi'ah and halacha are two different sigis. He thinks pink faket, mamash pink faket. The reason why, in other words, if you ask the Kizri, why do we have to do this halacha? Why can't we just do with the whole Kizis to answer this question? No, the whole Kizi can answer this question. Why can't we just use our cycle and decide what's right and what's wrong? Then it says that your cycle doesn't know most things, and what's right and what's wrong is not decided inherently by cycle, decided by the reality, which God decides. And how are you going to know? You have to have a Novi to tell you. This is the only way. And therefore, the whole Kol Haluch, in other words, there's a metaphysical reality when it's Shabbos, and the only way to find out is ask a Novi, or to rely on the tradition from the Nevi'im. There's no andere Weg. Now, does he agree that Chachamim could be mefarish things and will be mefarish things? Yes, but that's bereide. But if they make a mistake, it's Tzuris. And it could be the Kizdi would tell you, it could be, in other words, it's something that makes sense. I don't know if there might be actually things that he says like this, that because the Chacham made the wrong Achru of when Shabbos is, that's why we don't have Kizdi Shabbos. In other words, to him, if the Chacham would come together and say, make Shabbos on Sunday, but to us, then 1,000 years later people will wonder why they don't feel Kedushas Shabbos, and the Teretz will be that they have the wrong Shabbos. So the Rambam, this doesn't make sense. Shabbos is when the Chacham say. Or according to Chazal, this doesn't make sense, because even if the Tchilas Shabbos was really somewhere else, then it would change after the Chacham say. But the Kizi, it doesn't work like this. Because he never has the idea of a Novi changing the Marichas HaShamayim. There is a true one, and of course you need to have the right people to be able to accept it, the Zayda Kodesh and so on, but it's the truth. Okay? So therefore, in Halacha Lemas, and every single Halacha in the Torah, we have these two shittas. Either there's a true Halacha, which is based on Neviah, not on Chachma, not on Achruas, B'nai Udam, Chol Sheirichu. It's like the Kedri uses actually the Chestrayfes as a raya to this. They literally explains the Chestrayfes, that the Torah weisen nicht alles, and we have Nevi'im that tell us the true Treifes, and it's actually dangerous to eat the Treife. And if we make a mistake, we interpret the Nevi'im wrong, we're going to die for eating that Treife. You die spiritually or physically, whatever. If he thinks that what's the bad thing that happens? But it would be a bad thing. Right? So that's the two theories of halacha. Most poskim, I think, in most doyos are in the Rambam's theory. They don't care about the truth. Like Rebbe Lezer told us with the Talmud Shlach, ich care nicht. The halacha is decided, some of them were the Rambamisten, nominalist in the sense, right? They said the halacha, there's no halacha besides for what I say. Some of them were Chazalist. They said the halacha is real, but it changes by what I say. That's the more mystical people would say that. But none of them would say that I can make a mistake. Right? Who's the only one that says that we can make a mistake? The Kizri and the Chazon Ish. It's very important to realize. And the Chazon Ish does it without the Kizri's metaphysics, which is totally nuts. The Nefesh HaChaim, basically, when it's not the Chazon Ish that's shielding on this shit. Maybe the Tanya also holds like this. Because they have a whole new theory, which doesn't say anywhere before them, that says that halacha is true, in the sense of this is the only thing that God wants. They talk about Ritzon Hashem sometimes, or Chachmas Hashem. Chachmas Hashem is what it says in the Torah, and the Fide Chikim was Machriya the halacha, and the Fide in the Gemara and the Shonim, and suddenly the Shonim become part of Torah Mashmayim, which is nuts. Where do they get this idea from? Who ever thought like this? The Shonim are just people. So basically, they're fetish. You see them make everything up. Making up, like a boat of Sachen, but it's not like they don't pretend to say Messiah, they're just Mechadish. They're saying the Rishonim say such Chadish, and people don't realize this. The Rambam, the Ramban, the Razvi, all these people that we consider the Rishonim, they're huge Mechadishim. They're not traditional people. The Goyim are the ones that say we're not Mechadish anything. And maybe it's true, maybe not. But the Rishonim, they don't even pretend to be just Moise, what they Mekabel. They literally invented the word Chadish Torah. Right? And then, but I'm not even getting it. That's like a historical question, why they take Rishonim so seriously as people. But they have this idea that there's only one true halacha, and that's the one true Ritzon Hashem. Like, I don't know, where did you get this from?
You couldn't make a mistake of what the Torah wants. I mean,
of course. Beside this, so child is what the halacha, if you could have the wrong Shabbos. If, again,
what do you mean the wrong Shabbos? Are you supposed to do Shabbos then?
According to the Chazon Ish, imagine this is what what happens to the Chazon Ish's Dateline is a very.
Is it really Shabbos? Somewhat.
No.
What do you mean?
I have to find a different example, because this Dateline is actually a very salient example of something like this. But we could find different. It's true in Kol HaTorah, probably in much simpler ways. What do you mean? Let me tell you. Let's say something like this. The Chazon Ish. After let's say something like this. But that's a historical question. That's not a halacha question. That's a historical question. There's a true.
Everybody's asking that if I know for sure that Moshe Sanhedrin made a mistake, I still have to do what the Sanhedrin said.
Whatever. Not exactly. Only if you're a Gileru and so on.
Whatever.
Machloik Rishonim mehr pinklich. Yeah, aber no. What I'm saying is, I'm in it. A mistake, things could be wrong. Of course, even in Mephistomus, things could be mistake. It's wrong to kill schuldige people always. It's a first beside. But let me tell you, I could give a much broader problem that I have here. But let's finish the Dateline. The Dateline mushla is a very good mushla, because it's not a real halacha. In other words, what do I mean by real halacha? Real halacha is halacha that we have in tradition. Okay, so that's 2000 years. I'm gonna guess na zeches sirches, nicht na zeches sirches. This whole thing is based on some Gunish in the end. It's not even based on a Gemara. Stam the Shonim arguing between each other. Okay, but for that you could say that's the halacha. Halacha is there's but that's true every week for the past 1,000 years. People had Shabbos and Sirchas, and they went to the Ruv and they told them this more or less this halacha, and zemayesh. Right now, halacha like in other words, both if you think that there's a truth, if you think there's a truth, then you don't have anything to do with Yeridai, because there's no truth in Yeridai. But you could decide prutim after this. We could decide new prutim. Everyone agrees that we can't change basic mevanig. It says actually in the Rishonim, even I saw in there's a Magen Mishnah, the Nishta Magen Mishnah, there was someone else. He brings from Rishonim. They said in Kol Chestreifes mechanisch, there's no rule. The minig is whatever it is, and sometimes the minig is sois as a chalayin because Maich Madu and Zuklefia Indian at Mazim Machrigeven, and we can't zemayesh. So that's what it is. Now, if you want to be Chaznishnik, then you will change the Cheshchita, but also based on a very inside a very limited line, right? Okay. And you'll also never say someone made a mistake. Against Treifes. Not really, I don't think. I'm getting at this. What I'm saying is, you come. Dateline is a very good example. So therefore, it's not hard to see over there what people really think about this, because they probably most of them think that whatever the Shach said, that's Talocha and Kirnish what the truth is. And even the one that do care, Tosh the kleine cat. If you come to Dateline, it's a very good example because there's no halacha, right? There's no minik. Let's say no minik. Halacha and minik are the same thing, but there's no minik, right? There's obviously no minik. Otherwise, there won't be a question, right? If there's a minik, then even the Chazanish probably wouldn't have changed it.
Right.
And Schmidt is a good example, right? We don't know which year Schmidt is, so like we'll just do whatever the minik is, right? Where this minik start from, nobody even knows. Also, right? Chazanish talks about now. And therefore, someone could come and hack from hand bis morgen that you have the wrong Schmidt. Yeah, you have the wrong Schmidt. What can we do? In the Dateline question, you see people like the Chazanish mostly being mamish beroiges that you're not having Shabbos. And after, let's say, basically he does al das atzma and again as moide kneged sach andere rabunim, which I don't know who gave them the samach to decide, but that's the reality. And he says, I learned to sigi better than you, and my truth is, and since I think I'm right, obviously, and it's probably true that I learned to sigi better than them. And he says, what do you mean? This is a true Torah. You people are having Shabbos on Sunday. It was good food. The true halacha, I don't care where he got it from, the Gemara, the Rambam, the Garage. He had this idea that it doesn't matter. By the way, it doesn't matter for the Amarat. He looks at it that it could be that all the other Rabbuna are Amaratzim, and therefore, me knowing the true halacha means that you're not keeping Shabbos. Right, okay. This statement is not a statement that most poskim in the course of history would agree on. And in principle, I'm just using it as a very good example because you see, because all the other halachas are much more complicated. You see it very clearly. He thinks there's a real Shabbos that based on how he learns Gemara and Rishonim and Nazivat, and that's the real Shabbos. And not now, like I'm saying, not because.
But it's because he had this thing that durchsteigt in the Gemara.
Ich verstehe.
No, but if everybody else, but indeed.
And let's say it says in the Gemara.
No, he holds it, and they're not playing the same. They're not doing the right.
And maybe
the right method.
It's Lozana and therefore.
Well,
I'm not. I don't care where. No, absolutely not. No, of course not. This is just what we say when we have to have suffix. We look in the Gemara. When we don't have a suffix, we don't look in the Gemara.
No,
this is not true. This itself is a chiddush. But this is there's a line.
Only what the saying was from the Gemara.
Can we call Bachamol? I mean, this is a machloike. That's no. This is a regular machloike. This is not the first time we damals a machloike. What's interesting to me is not. Again, there's ashko exactly. There's ashkofe. I'm trying exactly. I'm being mechloike on the ashkofe, not on the Rishonim, on the idea that there's a real Shabbos. He found out the real Shabbos because of the Rishonim. But who says there's such a thing as a real Shabbos? Who
cares? Who cares if it says the Gemara?
I'm pretty sure that the Chazanish thinks that the Hanuga is a bitter. That's his one of his like shortage confusions in Kol Torah Kela.
You hold it, the Shonim didn't hold it. One that is right.
No, you're historically, ich weiß nicht, but in halachically it doesn't matter. All the Shonim agree that halachically it doesn't matter the truth. It doesn't matter totally. There's no. You could say there is a halachic truth, but it doesn't matter. There's no halachic truth. That in two ways, but Kila Alamoida, there's no such a thing. That never happened yet in the history of the world until Chazanish by the Dateline that there's halacha like a basic thing, and someone comes and shrais you oh Mechalel Shabbos because you're machriya different and has this kind of course the machloikas he's allowed to put in his diet into machloikas. I've my name folgen, ich weiß nicht.
No,
but that's not what is bothering him, that he's right in the dian zwischen der Rabbunan.
But where do you find something that you go against? The Stammers are, let's say, a new Shah, they're going to go against the Gemara, let's say?
Of course, we go against the Gemara new Shahs all the time.
What do you mean? Of course not.
Of course we do. Of course we do. Okay, this goes back to how you say, you keep on saying this thing, Gemara. What's my Gemara? There's no Gemara. We don't pass from the Gemara. The last person to pass from the Gemara was the Going. Why is it the Chaznish? But most people don't pass from the Gemara. What are you talking about? We're passing from Ergetz zwischen the Gemara and the Terezo. That's where things start, for real. Well, that's not even true, because it's a Gemara. Wow, seriously? The Gemara steht doch a lot of that. I don't think it's... Even Chazlish didn't really think that we should start everything from the Gemara. This is just a way of thinking. It doesn't matter. It's just a way of saying why he's right. Halt es gerecht. Aber if I was mad, wäre es gerecht, Bechlal. This is like a weird question. It's like a space question. Maybe when people go to space, it will become very real. When is Shabbos? When is Shabbos? There's no right truth. Why is he assuming that there has to be? By the way, it's not only this question. He thinks that all the even things that he knows that there are new things, he thinks there's a truth, or at least he acts as if there's a truth.
I mean, what's wrong with that?
It says what's wrong. It's just not true.
Hanhoga from the Torah, what are you supposed to do?
But if there's a proper Hanhoga is a thing, is Hanhoga. It's not true. Hanhoga means if the oil gets clean anders, it's not anders. That's what it means. That's the real nafkamina that I think between these two ways of thinking. It goes back, I'm not being clear now, I'm already talking for too long. It goes back to this whole, I'm telling you, the whole Nefesh HaChaim of thinking that halacha is in some real way Rutz Hashem. Because it's the halacha that says in the Gemara and something like that. I don't think any of the Shayim thought like that. If it's real in a real way Rutz Hashem, it has to be real in the real way Rutz Hashem either.
What?
It goes back to the halacha being real Rutz Hashem or whatever you want to call it because it says in the Gemara. And that's not what anyone else thought. Either you have a Rambamist, which says there's not, of course it's not real, it's not Hashem, it's just Hanoga Toiva, which is, of course, the best Hanoga. Well, not the best Hanoga, but it's not real. Or you're a Mekibel that says it's the real Rutz Hashem because Rutz Hashem looks in a certain way. There's certain signs of Rutz Hashem. Not just because, there is some, either you're a nominalist or you're a realist, right? You can't be a real nominalist. This is the funny... Because then they say the halacha, but there's nothing behind the halacha. If you say something behind the halacha, because then they realize, wait, if it's something behind the halacha, then some guy could be a novi basically and say.
What can I say like svuda? A right svuda. So those have the idea of the svuda. And Mr. Svuda?
Behind, no, he doesn't think that svuda is a thing. If he thinks that, of course not. Everything is a chak to him. There's no svudas. There's chak. Ich steigt in der Gemara. Was ist svuda? Was kommt da an svuda?
Why did Gemara say it? This is Shabbos darfst du gewoon hebben doen. If you look at it at the globe, this is the right way.
I don't think that's enough for him. He needs it to be Torah min Hashamayim. Because then you have andere svuras. So what? The idea of the Gemara is that all the Gemara svuras are the truth, like in some sort of metaphysical sense. I don't think it starts from this. I think it starts from the minna of the Torah.
I think it's cycle.
He doesn't. No, of course not. No, but again, we can't. So no, no, you can't. Of course, because this the whole thing of. But if the reason why the Gemara is true is because the svura, then it has to be able to be ugefrekt the Gemara from the svura. You can't do this. If everything becomes this way of playing with the words that everything should work out. If there's either there's something behind the words or there's nothing behind. If there's something behind, if it's a svura, then we should be able to be cholik on the Gemara misvura. Or at least maybe.
They have better svura.
What then? That's not svura. That's kabula. Svura doesn't include that we have to believe someone else's svura. That's a minute. That's not svura. Svura means the emes, and there's a emes without a way to access it is irrelevant. That's not the point. Anyone that ever believes that this truth, also this is the reality in history. Anyone that ever believes that the reason why the Torah is true is because there's a psychological truth behind it, also believes that we have access to that truth. At least the Chumim, nicht jeder eine. They were scared enough. At least the Rambam, and therefore he actually allowed himself to change things because of that. He didn't say you have to believe every shtickle Gemara. The ones that are true you have to believe. Because the only reason you have to believe it is because it's true. At least when Mafara Shlik Pshita, whatever the tactic of keeping the Kuvah the Chumim is, that's a wichtige Sache. But he doesn't believe that it's what defines the truth that it says in the Gemara, which is what you see the Lamdim, these Litvish people doing. They're not even looking for the Svura, the Chanish sometimes does. They're not even looking for the Svura behind the Gemara. They're looking to define the Svura by the Gemara. That's not Svura. Then you're saying the Gemara is Chok. Of course, we have to understand it, we have to know the Geda, the after the Chok. Right? And this is nobody's opinion. Again, according to the Kizli, a Novi could change the halacha. Why? Because the Novi he says it openly. If it can do with Zman Azeh, it's a practice problem. Because the halacha is based on Novi, and therefore it can be changed. According to the Rambam, a Chacham could change the halacha. Not all of them, because a lot of them are just Hanuga, and we can't change the Hanuga for political reasons, well, not for real reasons, right? And then the Doyez Chacham, you have people saying, Novi can't change it, and the Chacham can't change it. I feel in principle, nor was. Nor they Zach was that in the Gemara is the Amos, not because there's a truth behind it, because then the day you say that you open yourself to an attack from the truth. So it's not based on nothing. And therefore you also get very okay. And I have to still show you how all the people that spoke about Chtzas and everything, how there's at least 2 or 3 shitters in the Achronim about this, and it's all based on, not this is a Chaznish thing, but it's all based on a certain mess. I don't understand why you can't say like I said in the Kizri.
Look at the Malvin. I think Malvin says similar to you.
So I didn't print out the Malvin. I looked in it, so I saw someone mitzay into it. There's a little arichas, but the whole arichas is not about this. Oops. Okay. I kicked in the Malvin and I didn't understand. So what's the chiddush? Can someone kicken? Okay.
What do you find